Ladies and gentlemen, welcome one and all to Low Fuel Motorsport, and welcome to the ACC Drive Endurance Series. We're here in week 7 of season 17. My name is Ben Sapsford, aka Sapitron, and I am joined by the one and only Waps Racing, who hasn't got the camera, but we have got him in the commentary box. Hello, mate. How are you?
I'm doing fantastic, Ben. Thank you so much for having me. Very excited, very excited to be here.
I'm very excited as well. It's going to be absolutely brilliant today. We've already had some amazing racing around the season thus far. We have much to talk about and much to cover as the drivers are just getting themselves rigged up and set in free practice now. Let's get the important stuff out of the way. This is our new experience for us. We have recently joined the broadcast team, and I have to say it is an absolute privilege to be joining the LFM broadcast team. So before we go any further, wanted to thank the LFM team for giving myself and Waps the amazing opportunity to be here, as well as, of course, you watching at home, you watching the English broadcast right now. Hopefully we can do a brilliant job for you and give you that racing and viewing experience you deserve. But we have much to discuss, and first things first, let's take things through the standings. You can see a few different key players up on the screen right now, so a lot of points being accumulated. You can see in particular Skidmark Racing and Fischer Racing Esports, if I've read that correctly. They're the teams to beat right now. Doesn't it look that way, Waps?
I mean, sure it is from the points. The points don't lie, of course. It's all numbers, and there's lots to score still here in this week, and still a lot of rounds to come as well. So even if they don't score the points that they need today, there's going to be many rounds to go. And of course, yeah, here's the entire list of all the standings, and even the teams that have little points that are like in the midfield currently trying to battle through. They still will have plenty of opportunity in this week and in the next weeks as well to get back out in front.
Yeah, there's going to be a lot of tussling, particularly in the mid-pack, as you say. I'm very much looking forward to it. And I'm very excited to see what these drivers can do. We've got quite a variety, and we've got everyone already jumping in to free practice, as we said. But we can also take a bit of a reflective look. We can see at the results that we had from last time. So back out in Kyalami, we had some pretty impressive racing indeed, it looks like.
We got some good results as well. Obviously, the BMW currently out in first at the Kyalami results. We do see a few of those out on track, I believe, if I see that correctly. There's only one currently out in free practice. The track is filled with BMWs, McLarens, and Ferraris. So 22 teams with the results for last week at Kyalami, and lots of teams lined up here currently. 42 teams joined in the server, and that's it's bound to be a good grid.
Yeah, I'm going to be very impressed with the drivers, and of course we can't go further without also mentioning the other class, the GT4s. Remember, Multiclass here. You've got the Mercedes AMG currently sat on top. It's the duo Simrise and LM Racing Team Hungary, followed by the Calais Racing Team German and Canada divisions, both in the Aston. You've got a Ginetta poking its head up there as well, but the Mercedes in the GT4s anyway seems to be the popular pick.
I'm not surprised, really. Mercedes is a good car if you're able to drive it around the lap fast enough, and especially on a track like Kyalami. Lots of elevation as well, the uphills, the downhills, the small little curb taps that you take here and there, and Mercedes is able to just drive right on through all those. So that's a perfect pick for a track like Kyalami. And I mean, for Red Bull Ring, don't think it's going to be that much different. There's a few places where you can, of course, get the wheels over the curbs and take those little bit of edges off. But generally, I feel like we're going to see a good result here as well for the Mercedeses.
Yeah, I think it's going to be a good one for the Mercedes, but you can never count anyone out here. Of course, we have the balance of performance working to make sure that everyone is on even keel and equal footing. But we are just a couple of minutes away from the session itself, and I do really love the Red Bull Ring, and it's divisive for some. but I really do like it. I think it's a track that can produce some great racing, particularly up into turns 2 and 3. I think those are some real hotspots that you will be seeing a bit of action, if not into turns 4 and 5 and the last corner, which, careful of track limits, it's very easy to go wide there, and I think that will be invalidating a few qualifying runs, as we might see very soon.
Yeah, the track limit's of course a little bit wider than what some people might know from Formula 1. It's not the wide lines, the edge of the curbings. And there's a few drivers that I see in the practice session currently, not even going across the edge on the exit of turn 9, but usually they're on the exit of turn 10. So right before you come onto the back straight. And those two places are the spots where you get the most track limits, of course, out of these qualifying sessions. And I hope sincerely that no one is going to try and overtake into those corners and just take it smooth. But maybe we see some lapping with the GT Force, like you said, Multiclass. It's bound to have some action there as well. And hopefully it all goes cleanly through those corners.
Yeah, and we will be checking in with our drivers as well in just a moment, but this is also where we turn to you live at home. Anyone watching, you've got a particular team you are looking out for, any drivers you want to send some love, make sure you get those thoughts in the live chat to the side of your screen. Wherever you're watching, it's going to be a brilliant round tonight, and it's going to certainly heat up in terms of the championship. This, of course, is week 7, but we do have tonight at the Red Bull Ring, and we do have a few more interesting rounds coming up. We have got the Circuit de Catalunya next week, and then Spa, followed by Suzuka, just to name a few. So certainly a great calendar. We've had a great calendar upcoming. And as the final minute of practice wraps up, is there any particular... Well, we haven't seen the drivers too much in action yet. We haven't seen them too much out there. But are there any particular cars that you think are going to favour this course here?
Generally, you have to think that the Ford is still pretty good. And I know the balance of performance, the BOP, is doing a lot of work to balance out the cars and see that everyone drives as fairly as possible, and that whatever car you choose, you're going to have very close racing. But I do believe that the Ford, with its just the raw power that the car produces, I do think it's going to take some real good speeds into the long straight out of the first turn, especially out of turn 3, the hairpin, down into turn 4. I think you can get some real power out of there. And that's, of course, running up to turn 4. One of the bigger overtaking opportunities besides turn 3, of course. I do think the Ford can just get a real good lead out of that, out of the hairpin. Just get their feet in just a little bit, or their nose in, I should say, a little bit further than any other car.
Yeah, well, it really is going to be about that rotation and your ability to hold speed through some of those medium speed corners. I think to the second sector of the track, just after you've come out of turns 4 and 5, you really do need to balance it on the edge of grip and on those apexes if you want to have a chance of making it out cleanly and making it out with a good line heading into those final 2 right-handers. Either way, though, it's going to be very good to watch, and we hope that you at home are strapped in for a solid round. The drivers are just pulling in from free practice, and then as soon as the green light goes, we will be jumping trackside and we will be seeing our racers get down to it and get themselves at trackside for qualifying, as we are about to jump to. We're going to see it's a flurry of cars immediately. No time being wasted. The field is out, and the field is out in droves, as everyone's just rushing to get a good time on those boards.
Now, one thing I do notice is that usually in multi-class racing, they split the qualifying between GT3s and GT4s, but I am seeing some of the GT4s go out on track already. Not sure if that is planned or not, but everyone's just going out. And that's for sure going to frustrate some of the GT3s as they make their laps around. They're probably going to be facing some heavy traffic, especially if everyone's going out at the same time. Like you said, no time wasted. Straight out the gate, everyone is going for it, absolutely sending it on those on these cold tires. Try not to get them too worn, of course, but yeah, it's going to be a watch for traffic for this qualifying run.
Yep, and watching out for that traffic is going to be the name of the game here in qualifying. We've got a few of the GT3s making an early break quickly, wasting no time in getting out there, getting their cars across for some qualifying runs. Is he trying to warm those tyres up? That is going to be Lucas, the number 109. And going to be pushing hard to try and get something on the board quickly right out the gate.
That's the exit of the final turn. Those are the track limits that we were talking about before. Of course, the exit of turn 1 going to have a similar one all the way on the left-hand side now. All the curb take, and like I said, track limits a little bit further than what some people are used to. Taking a bit much a curb on the outside there as well. But this does all look very good from the 109 car running up to turn 2 and turn 3.
Yep, nice and clean. So tucking into the left side much as you can. Jump on those brakes all the way down. Got to be wary of a little bit of traffic, but we do see that is the McLaren GT4 yielding in order to let the car on a lap go by. So good sportsmanship being shown as always. But you can really see how the number 109 is just pushing the real edge of the circuit. He's not leaving a millisecond up to chance here.
That's very strange to see as well, because right behind the 109 car, we have the 105 and the 113 so close that it appears that they're racing, even though they're on the qualifying lap. And the 113 car, I believe, is on the back. That's Eric Gazelle, currently in the Aston Martin, trying to make his way through, and he appears to be just a tiny bit quicker, but he's getting stuck behind the car ahead, and this is what happens when everyone goes out at the same time. You can't get space to get your own lap in.
Yeah, and that's really what you need. It's just the breathing room. It's just the ability to set your own lap unencumbered. But we're going to start seeing a few laps start to come in now, as the first lap, unfortunately, is going to be invalid, it looks like. But Jan Boucher, the number 118, is going to be the first across Jannes Reinders. I am going to butcher some of these pronunciations, and I can only apologize in advance. But the times are quickly coming in. We had some invalidations from our early runners, but looking nice and swift here. Sean Tempest currently leads with a .732.
From the laps that I've seen in the previous practice sessions that we've had on this track, I do believe the 27.0s will be the benchmark for the front runners at least. Currently 27.7 out in front from the 104 Ford. Not a bad lap at all, but I do believe we can get down to the low 27s for sure. If not, someone's going to be tryharding for that 26.9 symbol now over the line. With a 27.4, that's going to be closer to the low 27s that we want to see at the front of the grid.
We're seeing a few of the GT4 times come in. Basti Winkler and Timo Krobler in the GT4s with a 137, although that's been quickly usurped, as many of the GT4s are now making their way in. Pornowski, the number 107, is going to be running very close to a lap there. But we'll see where he can come out in just a moment. We're checking around the field as we still have a lot of drivers yet to set some times. Only about 25 of 45 who are currently in this session have put something on the books.
Maybe they're just trying to see if some of the drivers that have set a lap are confident with their lap, are happy and know that they can't improve any further. Maybe they're just going to stay in the pits and hope for some more track time, some more track space, I should say, especially with those GT4s coming around as well. Everyone knows the GT4s are slower, so they take a lot more time on the track. Or a lot, I should say. It's only about 10 seconds that they take more on the track. So maybe they want to wait for those cars to go into the pits and make sure that they've done their laps, done and dusted, more space on the track, more room to get their own laps in, and like we saw before, lots of traffic here as well. Currently looking at turn 4 and 5, and it's an absolute car park with these GT3s trying to move through the GT4s.
Looking rapid right now, and Basti Winkler was overtaken into the 36s and 35s. Lucas Busak is currently holding the fastest GT4 time in the number 401. Encountering a little bit of traffic, although is on their fastest, so we could see that be pushed even further as they come up to the line. It is a 35.365 there, so Lucas very impressed with that run right there.
Yeah, now going back to the pits and going straight back out once again. I was hoping that maybe some drivers would be would be happy with their laps already, but 14 minutes remaining, only 6 minutes gone. So there's lots of time to be had, a lot of space to set their laps. Currently closest to the pole position, the 102 car just set their lap time, and to be very, very close out front. It's a 1:27.320. So we're getting really into those low 27s now, and I won't be surprised if we see a 26 fly around in the final minutes of qualifying.
We have Lucas Schneckenberger with a 27.3 flat. So they are the time to beat and the car that everyone is so desperately chasing after. A few more cars making their way through. Finn Zimbal's about to finish a lap. Unfortunately, invalidated, not going to be taking a fresh time home today on this occasion. We're sticking on board with Jan Dreschler, the number 110 Porsche, looking fairly rapid right now. They've had a couple of laps in the 128s and invalidated, so nothing on the books yet, but still has a chance here. 13 minutes left in this session, and a 27.5 could be on the table if they keep up this current pace.
I did see in one of the incident logs that there was a small collision between a GT3 and a GT4 out of the exit of turn 2. GT3 just getting a little bit too quick and tapping a GT4 off the track. So that's what we're about to see when we are looking at GT3s lapping the GT4s. No doubt an incident being reported, and the stewards going to have to take a look at that. And hopefully that's going to be the last one for the qualifying. Of course, never happy to have those impeding things going on in a qualifying session. And like you said, drivers just improving all over. You said it was getting hot in the competition, but not only in the competition, it's getting hot on track as well. Currently dealing with 24 degrees Celsius air temp and 31 degrees Celsius track temp. That's obviously going to be very difficult for the drivers as well to keep their temperatures in that perfect window that they need. Going to be increasing the pressures a tiny bit to get the perfect race pressures going on, but that increases the heat as well. So it's going to be difficult to change that from qualifying and race. And I'm interested to see when the pit stops are going to happen and how many drivers will be maybe double stinting their tires.
Well, we can certainly keep an eye on a few drivers who are making some sharp improvements. A lot of them have headed into the pits. They've got some good early runs. And something I've noticed is they tend to take an invalid run early before they go for their real one. Is that a strategy to take a sort of run off the books rather than going straight for it, even after their outlap? Is that for the tires? Is that for sort of maximum weight reduction with burning some fuel? Very curious to learn that one.
Well, from my personal experience, I've always had issues setting a lap out of the gate, just going around for one lap and then doing it. So I usually set one lap in like a slower pace so that I have the delta ready and that I can see in every single corner where I'm faster and how much I'm faster by. And driving towards the delta usually helps me get faster. So maybe these drivers have the same mental issue that I have, and they just need something on the board, and then they go for something else. And of course, like you said, the fuel thing might also be true, as there's no doubt going to be a point something in the tank that you need for it. And you can just do one run and then have the second one be absolutely dead zero on the fuel tank when you cross the finish line.
Yeah, and I think there is a bit of psychology in there as well. It's almost looking at the banker laps that you could get and looking at it like insurance, because you have a lot more pressure on your shoulders when you don't have a lap on the timing board. You feel like every lap has to be perfect, but you're consciously or subconsciously wary of those limits. You know that if you don't get something on the board, you will be dead last. So it's good to have that first lap, even if it's half a second off pace, because that will mean that you have something to fall back on, and it means you can really push.
I think that's also important for the GT3s more than the GT4s, of course. Because if a GT4 sets a lap time and you don't as a GT3, that means you're starting behind the slower class cars. That means that from the start, you have to fight your way through the cars that are slower than you. You know that are slower than you, but you're not free to go. It's not a blue flag. It's still for position. You still have to race them. So they're going to be sure to put up a battle as well, trying to defend that position. So if you're a GT3, you want to set in that banker lap. You want at least one lap down, so you know you're ahead of the GT4s.
Yeah, and don't forget as well, golden rule, it's on the passing car to make sure they do so safely. So you cannot be taking chances when it comes to your position on track, even if you are overtaking slower cars and slower traffic, especially in qualifying where they're going to be on runs too. So they're not going to be the keenest people in the world to be yielding, especially when they are up on the delta. As Stratman is right here, the number 407 Mercedes could be up as much as 3/4 of a second. Just needs to bring it home here, but this could slingshot them into the single digits relative to their class.
Yeah, I'm looking at the improvements, and it looks like the front runners aren't doing that much of an improvement on their current laps. There is some time still, as looking at the best sector times from each fastest lap from each car, from each team. We currently have the 109 car only holds the second sector. Still, there's about a tenth and a half to find in the first sector, and about the same tenth and a half to find in that third sector. Those are held by the 107 and the 102 cars respectively in third and second. So the 109 car, the Ferrari, definitely has about 3/10 to find, and that's exactly the 27.0 that I was talking about before. So maybe they're just getting to know the track a little bit better, or just trying to get a feel for where the grip is, because track evolution is still a thing. It's going to be rubber laid down, or maybe just trying to push those limits every single lap. And we see the 113 car as currently sat in P10, just crossed the line and didn't improve. They were stuck behind a GT4, and it's more and more traffic that these drivers have to deal with.
Well, the important thing is for these drivers right now, they have times on the board, they have track evolution in their favor, but they need to keep pushing. You can't rest on your laurels, because for all you know, another driver's going to sweep in with another 10th cut off your time, and it is as good as done. So, in the case of Schenkenberger, for instance, currently still sat at the top with a 27.3 flat, but still pushing, not leaving anything to chance. He was technically up in the first sector, even by a hair's breadth, and that's the kind of chance and the kind of pace that is being pushed here in a major way.
Yeah, the Delta's absolutely dancing around that 0.0. It's looking wild how they can go qualifying lap after qualifying lap so close to their deltas through that final turn now, trying to see if there's a little bit of time to be gained there. Very wide up to the limit, and there's the time gained. Just a few thousandths as they cross the line. It's going to be 27.272. That's 28 thousandths of a second quicker than their previous lap, and those are the limits that we're working with. That might just be the pole defining time.
And a seriously impressive time that is, but not to be outdone. Many other drivers are still pushing and still going to be making some improvement. Eric DSL here just slingshotting up into third place. Very good lap from the Aston, 0.397. Going to put them within striking distance of that front row. But that
be careful to watch for that 107 car currently on the final turn on the exit. Looks to be taking away that pole position now as they come across the line. 3/10 of improvement, and they do take away that pole position. It's a 27.087 as predicted. There you have it.
Brilliant. Sneaking under the radar there much, and I don't know how you could do it with a livery that bright.
I think there's a strategy behind it. If other drivers are looking at your car and it's bright like that, they get distracted. They want to swivel out of the way. They want to get by you as quickly as possible. They don't wait for the opportunity. They just want to get it out of their face, and that's how you confuse them. That's how you get them.
Yep, this just in. Every pastel or neon color does in fact add 20 horsepower to your car. So secret,
scientifically proven. Yeah, of course. That's hidden in the LFM balance of performance. We take 5 kilograms off your car as soon as you put pink on your car.
See, well, you heard it here first, folks. That's the way to stay competitive in these realms. But look at this. Nowski is not done yet. That 107 Mustang is not content with the 0.0. Still pushing, still been purple for a good chunk of this lap. Even when having to deal with a bit of traffic, could they see a 26? It certainly was almost knocking on the door there. Let's see how they do through the final 2 corners. Tucking it nice and neatly to the very edge of the track. Just got to get a good entrance out of there. Watch for the camber. Watch for the curb. And coming up to the line, it's 0.0. It's a 0.020. It's so close to a 26. They almost had it. I think if they didn't have to deal with a bit of traffic in turn 3, that would be a 26.9.
It actually looked like a 26.9 all the way through turn 9, but as soon as they were on the exit of turn 10, they went just a little bit too wide, I think. I think they could have taken a little bit more apex with this Ford. It's a front-engined car. The suspensions are soft enough, like they should be on this track. You should be able to just ride over it and take away some of those some of the corner radius. But I think they went a tiny bit too wide, lost a bit of time compared to their previous lap, and it was indeed looking like a 26.9, but it ended up being a 27 flat, almost flat, but a 27.020. Still an absolutely amazing lap, and I'm curious to see if anyone can get close to it in these final 3 minutes.
I have a few of the GT4s running into a bit of traffic issues amongst themselves. So we can jump on board with a few different cars who are making their way out for final runs, but eyes are on the GT4s for just a moment. As you can see, not only are we dealing with a bit of congestion within class, but out of class as well. There is going to be masses of drivers who are just trying to get a good run finished and aren't really getting the opportunity afforded.
Yeah, if we look at the split between GT3s and GT4s, the GT4s are obviously going to be overtaken by the GT3s on the track, on their qualifying runs, and it's not only going to be difficult for the GT3s trying to get past, but once the GT4s are getting up to their braking zone, they're going to have all these GT3s around them to worry about, because the last thing you want is to knock a GT3 out of their qualifying lap, and I mean, you don't want to knock anyone out of their qualifying lap, because that's just impeding. But these GT4s have a lot to be worried about with less active brakes. I just saw a GT3 sending it absolutely on the inside of the 410 car. That's a GT4 running in Sector 2. So these GT3s are not shy at all.
Well, they've made something very clear. They are faster than the GT4s, and they're not afraid to just show that in terms of the timing boards. They make that very clear with how they push on a track. Because let's get something out of the way right now as we head into the final couple of minutes qualifying. The GT3s, they know they are faster, and they are taking command of the track in that regard. They see a GT4 up ahead of them, they are going to do anything they can to get by. It hurts their race, it doesn't help them at all, and most importantly, they need a clear run. Well, they're not going to be able to extract maximum pace. GT4s are in a bit of a different spot because they can almost use the GT3 for a bit of slipstream down a straightaway, but the same luxury is not in the other direction.
I do want to quickly say, though, the top 21 in the GT3s are currently within a second. It's almost impossible to have all of these drivers within a second, but they're almost doing it. Currently 25 cars on the GT3 class and 21 within 9.5 tenths. Absolutely crazy competitive. And the GT4s are a little bit more split, a little bit bigger of a margin, of course. More lap time is, of course, going to have a bigger margin when you look at percentages-wise. But these GT4s, not too far off the back. You see the GT3s P25 currently with a 128.3, but the pole position for GT4 is at 35.3. That's only 7 seconds difference between the GT3s and the GT4s. Spread that over the entire track, it's not too much.
And when you put it all together, as qualifying is officially coming to a close, what we have is a grid that is pushing each other to the very limits. Checkered flag has fallen, and that means final runs are in session. So coming up to the line, a few different cars who are abandoning their times, heading into the pit lane. Few are pushing further out, but it looks like most are invalid at this point. And with that, we do see our checkered and our quali order more or less finalized here. Oh, a little bit of mowing the grass there for Zimbol. But given that they are second in class, I think they've earned it a little bit.
Sort of a celebratory lawn mowing session, I would call it. I feel like Valtteri Bottas would be very, very happy with it. Seems to be the normal way. If we're looking at Nowski currently as well, very happy with starting on pole position, also going over the grass a little bit. Gonna have to see if that is going to be the case during the race as well. They are going to be taking a little shortcut into the pits as soon as they make their stops. As still a GT3 out on track, the 104 car is improving. Looks to be getting some positions as well. So currently heading on to turn 9 and turn 10, 3/10 up on their previous best. P15 is not a bad P15 is not a bad position to be in at all, and improving by just over 2/10 again. It's going to be jumping up at least a few positions. So from P15, it's going to be up to P10. And that's a great improvement.
Very impressive overall. We do have Chris Radke, who is going to be, I believe, our last driver out on track. Apart from one GT4, that is going to be Ricky Lafleur in the Aston Martin. Now, my question is, is the GT3 going to be able to catch up to the Aston in time? It's almost a little game of chicken. You can see it just in the background there, as both of them are pushing hard on their final runs here. Radke's about equal on Delta, but this could be a lot for Ricky in the number 408. This is half a second up. This could be huge.
It's currently 3.5 seconds in between the GT3 and the GT4. Only 2 corners remaining. I think it might be a little bit close. The GT4 should be able to make it. Like you said, half a second improvement on your fastest lap time. It's quite a bit as they abandon it. And it's back to the pits. It's time over. And it's qualifying done. So Ricky Lafleur not able to improve. But that would have been an insane lap. That would have put them, I believe, up to P30 even. And that is that's third in class.
Yeah, well, seriously impressive from everyone. And I got to say, I'm really looking forward to this race. It's going to be pretty intense. It's going to be pretty grueling. But the drivers are prepped. The drivers are primed. And I am seriously excited for what's about to go down. GT3 and GT4 action. It's all going to be kicking off. I think those first couple of laps, they might want to be a little bit nervous, a little bit wary about where they place their cars. But it's going to be a great session as we are just getting ready to go out once more.
One thing to look out for, especially on the first few laps, is everyone's run coming up to turn 1. It's quite fast. Everyone wants to go all the way out, all the way in, all the way out, like you do in normal corners. But because there's side-by-side starts and you can't really, drive another car into the wall, it's going to be very interesting to see who has practiced their braking points to take the outside line and the inside line, of course, for those starting there, and who hasn't, and who is going to absolutely fumble this first start and lose out on position. So everyone who has practiced those extra little bits are going to have a major advantage going into the first lap and maybe the laps after, because I do expect the racing to be close as the qualifying 20 cars within a second. That's crazy. This racing is about to be so close for the first few laps.
Well, with the drivers now getting their cars and setups all fully finalized and qualifying under their belt, the race is set to be absolutely electric. There's no two ways about it. The drivers are going to be really pushing the limits here. And let's actually jump on with the drivers themselves and see who we are dealing with. In the first spot, we have David taking the 107 car, Zaynowski with the great qualifying we saw. Second is going to be going to the Gladius competitions, number 103 with Zimbal. We have Schneckenberger doing a fine job and taking the qualifying with LFM Esports. Fourth is also going to be an LFM Esports car, this time the 102 with Yanis Reinders. Fifth is going to be held primarily by Madcap Racing with Linus and Matteo taking a solid spot. P6 is going to be your Aston Fisher Racing Esports with Giselle and Schenker. Seventh is going to be the McLaren of Sim RC Pro-Am by Armenia Schwarzman in 7th place. Eighth is heading to the Mustang of the VDS Racing Team. I gotta say, looking nice in the red and white. Not to be outdone though, Skidmark Racing P9 with Paul and Kloppert in the number 111. 10th in the Mustang, Dakota Esports with Tempest and Morant in the GT3. Another Mustang lining up alongside. That's the 105 of Visceral Esports in P11. P12 is going to be the AMG GT3 of Wasner and Schaff with Low Fuel Motorsport in the 1.106. And then 13th, West Competition Racing with Brenham in the number 101 Aston Martin. Finally, rounding out GT3s to say 110 of Skidmark Racing, Dressler and as well as in the 110 Porsche. And Orin begins in Infelix Racing. In very nice in the 296. 16th place, that's going to be another Fisher Racing car. The 115 this time, Axman and Puzel. And Radke in 17th, Adrenaline Racing Team with the number 122 Ferrari. 18th is going to be Fisher Racing once again, Crush and Muller with the 117 Mustang. Alongside Jean Boucher with the Eurobeat Intensifies team. Points for the name there, number 118 Ferrari. Only 20th place as Fisher Racing Academy, the number 123. As they are getting started on their formations. We'll stick on board Bixby, QRT Esports 21st in the Aston Martin with the beautiful looking Alpha Racing team car, number 112, that's Cantor and Simic. Now the 720S this time is Florenti, number 121, SRT Safe Racer team. Mimosa Hit Speed Racing, you can see they've even got the tags and the names too, number 24. 25th is going to go to Maniram, Close Quarter Racing with 26. Now starting off with your GT4s, it's going to be Dynamo Youngstars Busak in the McLaren Fisher Racing Academy, this time in the Aston GT4, number 402. With Rehak in Fisher Racing Casual, so in the McLaren. 29th, and No Speed Racing, very nice in the black and blue, I gotta say. French team looking nice with their design. DK Racing in the GT4 Mercedes. 31st going to Daniel Keffer in the... Oh, interesting. It's a bit of a hiccup there on the data. We do have LMLM Racing Team Hungary with Zabo in the 32nd. That's going to take you to SimRC Pro-Am by Barmenia. With Mate Pap in Drive-Through Sim Racing in the number 414. DK Racing with David Keffer is going to be your Aston in GT4. Alongside another is going to be Ricky Lafleur and Timo Krobler in the Kalitz Racing team. Last couple of places now. It's Lux Racing with Ben Schmidt in the McLaren. It's going to be the Aston of Tornus Racing, Ben Rees. It's number 39 Fisher Racing once again, Winkler and Stratman. Well, that's QRT, so this was the Fisher Racing car. Looks like they got swapped around somewhere along the way. It's the MIP Endurance car. Now everybody is lining up. 406, this is Janetta, a Dragon Racing team. Only Janetta on course, fun fact. Final cars, Bodenstandig Racing in the McLaren. Daniel Meerman in Dragon Racing team. And here we go. Looks like no time left for our grid walk. You can see it's a flurry of cars left, right and centre. Let's see how these racers are showing themselves, and it's a mad dash up into the first couple of corners. Looks like we've already seen chaos, we've already seen incidents as things are kicking off much further away. We'll have to check in with those incidents in just a moment's time. Absolute chaos to start off with. Look at the amount of cars that's going sideways.
There's so many cars swapping positions around, losing a few places here and there. You see a couple of cars actually all the way in the back. The Janetta that we talked about is lost some places. It's now running up to the uphill. Lots of shuffling, of course, but most importantly, the 107 Nowski in the Ford, dropping down 2 places from pole position. Not the greatest start, was already overtaken before turn 1. and is now looking to gain some of those places back. The 109 Ferrari jumping up a spot as well, jumping up 2 spots actually, as Reinders is also down a place, down to P4, and Zimbo in the 103 Porsche just taking away the lead from turn 1. Amazing job from the start, good reaction time, and now leading into turn 9 as there is almost an inside line being taken there, a little bit pushed further for that Porsche, still leading the pack.
Yeah, it's a rumble of the ages here as everyone's just fighting for those early positions, trying to get themselves a little bit of breathing room. There's no opportunity for error in this early stage of the race, and we've seen that come to fruition mightily so as the fastest laps are pouring in. The racers are making quick work of each other's positions, and now everyone is just trying to find a sense of calm. The GT4's having much of a similar story as well. There's going to be a couple of moves heading their way through. Basti Winkler, we just saw the 407 Mercedes also going for a bit of a dash, but eyes to the top as that is Nowski making his way, making and baking, shake and bake much, but he's going to be pushing into P2 and now into P1. He's on the inside of the Porsche. Can he hold it together? Zimbal is hot on his heels, practically snipping at the heels of that rear bumper. He's not going to let him go that easy.
That was an amazing move all the way from turn 1, going up to 2nd place already, taking it away from the 109 Ferrari, and then wasting no time at all into turn 4, taking that P1 back again, and they're basically as is for the top 2. Of course, Reinders trying to take that P3 back so we can have the top 3 secure. Like we were talking about with the GT4s, there's actually been a little, a small shuffle. One car dropping all the way back. It's the 414 Mercedes, all the way in the back now from supposedly probably an incident. One GT3 currently in the pits. It's the 122 car, but the rest of the GT4s seem to be pretty much where they started, with the 401 car, the McLaren, miles ahead of the competition. Already a gap of 3 seconds created to the car behind.
Yeah, so we're on board with Lucas Busak in the McLaren right now, and you can see, as described, massive gap being pulled away, immediately looking like a contender for one of the racers to beat here. So massive gap to the others in the field, but 3.5 seconds between himself and Rihak. That is quite a difficult thing to overcome.
And of course, no races are won on lap 1. Big incident in turn 4. You see a car, that was the 106 Mercedes, making contact, and it's a big pileup now in the middle of turn 4. Some cars run off to the sand, making their way back onto the track, but lots of drivers involved in that one, and that's going to cause some shuffling with the 106 Mercedes dropping a little bit behind. Gonna check real quick in the replay what happened exactly, so we can actually have a little bit of a better view of that. But it appears that's just a massive pile.
Yeah, so let's get a quick replay of that one. You can see it looks like there's a bit of a rearward bump and a bit of concertina effect. Looks like that was one of the LFM Esports cars of the Ferrari. Just going back to the Mercedes, and that's all she wrote. That's all she wrote, unfortunately. No such luck being had by Sasha Wasner there, but does look like they're managing to make quick work and get themselves back into fighting form.
And as these cars were ready to go into the pits, there's actually more incidents happening. One car was on their way to the pits, as it looked like, and then there was some more contact by cars slowing down and cars speeding up out of turn 9, and that caused a few of these cars to also drop back even further. Some of the GT3s heading into the pits already. It's going to throw a little bit of a stick in the wheel for their strategy, but it looks like it can all still be caught back up for these drivers, so it should be fine. As we do see Zimbal dropping back one more position, taking the lead into turn 1, but now drop back to P3 after the end of these first 3 laps, currently on lap 4. And it does look like the 107 Ford is taking the lead a little bit further away, trying to create a gap behind that's more than a second, more than that slipstream allows, so that everyone behind just gets left, and maybe trying to do the job that Busak is currently doing and creating a big gap.
Yeah, got to create those early gaps early on, because this is a 3-hour race. This is an enduro. This is not something that you just get that early dash and that's the end of it. You need to build that consistent gap over time. You need to put some consistent laps down because you're going to have to tag. You're going to have to be supportive with your team. So you cannot be taking those early chances and early pushes without having a plan in place. This is the BMW and Aston coming together. This is Jonken and Ries in the 410 and 420 cars respectively. They go side by side all the way through into the third sector. Now BMW currently holds the apex. A little bit better on the entry there. Has the chance to leverage it. Does wash out a bit wide, however. And regardless of their on-track positioning, they do hold on to the spot. But I don't get the sense that Ries is going to take that one so lightly.
I do think the battling in the GT4 is already looking very lively. Big look on the inside. Sent as well into the first turn. Has to leave the space on the inside. And there's some good battling that's hopefully going to go up to all the way onto turn 3.
Yeah, just keeping each other honest as we head our way through the rest of this next lap. Now he dips left, he dips right. Eventually, the Aston is going to tuck to the outside a little bit more as the BMW takes defensive measures. Oh, going out side of the track surface, having to take a bit of avoiding action. It's like, and we will check back in with them as well in a moment. But this is Keffer and Hartmann having much of the same battle. It's almost a game of parallels. You've got a BMW and an Aston fighting against each other, heading through the Red Bull ring.
Well, there's 3 constants in life. It is death, it is taxes, and it is a BMW trying to get past an Aston Martin, who's just taken away their positions. Hartmann now up to P27, and that appears to be 4th in class on their way to a podium. Well, there are some incidents going on currently. There's the 111 Ferrari off the track, losing many positions. Down in P22 currently, started P9, so from the top 10 all the way down. There's also more incidents a little bit early.
So this is going to be the incident with the 111 car. This is Kajpour. We'll see exactly what happened here. So it looks like the 124 washed a little bit wide, kind of spooked the Ferrari here, and they weren't really able to recover things. So that is where they are unfortunately left out to dry.
It looks like the Porsche of Zimbal, the 103, currently in 3rd place, isn't able to keep up with the front runners. And the 107 and the 109 car is just running away with it. Currently 1.5 second gap between the front 2 and P3. So that's going to be a fun one to see catch back up.
Yeah, so we'll have a couple of chances to look at what's going on. We did have a bit of a scuffle between the other cars in GT4, but looks like they've mostly come out of this unscathed. No major casualties at this point in time. They're just keeping each other right now held to the edge of grip. There's going to be a GT3 now encountering a bit of a traffic issue, and you can see how they are just very eager to make quick work of the obstruction.
And that's the lapping that we were talking about 7 to 8 seconds per lap difference in pace between the GT3s and the GT4s, and it looks like Busak in the 401, McLaren in the GT4 actually has that pace difference with the rest of the grid. Currently has a 5-second advantage over 2nd place in GT4. He said to work together with your team and make sure that you don't make any mistakes in this early section of the race, so don't piss your teammates off at all. And it looks like Busak is the only driver on his team, so the only one he can piss off is himself. He's currently running really well in the lead, and doesn't look like he's going to be slowing down anytime soon.
Yeah, I mean, I think the speed in this stage of the race is going to be absolutely crucial because he's got to keep himself honest. As you said, it doesn't look like he's got anyone in his team besides himself, so an early breakaway is going to serve him massively in the later stints. He's not going to have that much mental pressure. He's not going to have to exert himself as hard. He can afford to take the next stints, or at least the next section of this one, a little bit safer, and hopefully relax into a nice rhythm that could carry him through this event.
And I was just talking about the Porsche that was dropping down to P3, making a gap. Currently dropped down to P4. Reinders is past, now defending into turn 3. Porsche looking on the inside. Is he going to go send it? No, he's going to brake right on time, slip right on behind. But there is Schwartzman, the 114 McLaren, right behind, ready to bounce. And there's the 116 Ford as well. Small train now, 4 cars currently from 3rd to 6th, all looking to take away that final podium spot. Of course, it's the first 15 minutes. It's never being won in the first lap, not in the first stint, of course. And speaking of stints, actually, I did notice that there's a 48-minute stint timer for these drivers, which means that they have to go into the pit lane after or within 48 minutes, or else risk having to serve a penalty, which basically forces all these drivers to do at least a 3-stop to be able to finish this event. And I'm sure that everyone will be pushing to go to those final few minutes of their stint timer, because of course 4 times 45 is this entire 3-hour race, so you just have a few minutes of spare time to make those stops. That's something to look out for in the pit window. That's going to be happening in about half an hour's time.
And depending on how the teams want to play it as well, this does potentially offer a little bit of a flex. Of course, those stint timers are in place to make sure everyone gets a go, and even if you are Ironmanning it, that you have regular intervals that you can take a moment in. But that extra couple of minutes for each stint time could give you a lap's worth of flexibility depending on how it's interpreted, and this could be a massive difference to strategy. Do you slightly overcut your competition? That could give you the space you need to make a move with a couple of seconds saved.
And exactly like you said, those extra minutes account for about 2 laps. We currently see the front runners doing 128.7, 128.5, fastest laps currently into the 127s, which means that with those 3 minutes, you get exactly 2 laps and a few seconds spare to be able to get that pit stop, to get the pit stop a few laps later if you wish. And that's all, obviously, if you do that 2 times, and the 3rd time, your stint is just going to be a few laps shorter on that after that final pit stop. So like you said, the overcut, staying 2 laps longer, but you can also go 2 laps shorter, even 4 laps shorter on that first stint to maybe try and play with the strategy. I think that's going to be something for the 102 and the 103 cars currently in 3rd and 4th. It'll be something to look at for them, as they have a small gap out in front, no slipstream being gained from 2nd place, lots of traffic to walk through. Look at that, all those GT4s on the track. It's going to be chaos, and this is going to be opening up some gaps as well. Luckily, the Porsche 103 currently getting real close to the rear of that Ferrari, getting through this traffic properly. The McLaren jumping out of the way. Now they're going up to turn 3.
Yeah, so hunting for the spots and having to deal with 2 different types of challenge. On the one hand, you've got your GT3 opponent immediately in front of you. How are you going to find your way past? But even beyond that, you're looking at the GT4s, where they're trying to place themselves relative to the circuit. You've got to navigate all of that and make those split-second decisions in about 0.2 of a second before you head into a corner, because once you're committed to your braking line, good luck going anywhere else.
And it's not even permitted in the rules. Once you stick to your braking line, your braking point, I should say, it's no use trying to move out of the way at all, because that would be considered moving on the braking. And if you do impede anyone or cause a collision, you will be penalized for it. So these drivers, like you said, having to make those decisions in split seconds, and they have to be the right decisions, or else they risk causing a collision here as well with the GT4s trying to get past. And they only have a few more to go. They're about halfway through the grid of the GT4s. There's a few more coming up, and luckily they'll have some space now to go right on through. And looking right behind this, we do see the 114 car getting chased down by the 116 Ford into turn 1, going very defensive on that inside line. The Ford all the way around the outside, but the McLaren just a bit more aero than that Ford, who has to rely all on that engine power. And the McLaren in those mid-speed corners just being able to take the lead, leaving the Ford behind.
Yes, that aggression, it's the ability to poke the nose in and see it throughout. That's what certainly helped out Schwartzman with getting that 114 car up into P5. And let's see if he can hold it there, because the Ford will lean it to its own strengths to keep that McLaren on a leash. We do have a couple of other cars who are fighting a bit further down the order, and we'll of course check in with our GT4s as well. But Curiously, the GT4s have, for the most part, found a sense of stability. A lot of them are fairly spaced out at this point in the race.
There's a few of them that have gained a few positions, and actually a lot that have gained, but that's due to drivers in the first lap backing out and getting into a collision. And like you said, yeah, the rest of all have created pretty good gaps, especially out in front. 7 seconds gap to P2, and then 2 seconds to P3. And then there's a small train, once again from P3 down to P6. And then there's a lot of cars that all have over a second gap. So like you said, those GT4s finding their rhythm, and also finding a rhythm. You see the 109 Ferrari getting real close, and has been close to Nowski for the past few laps, has been chasing him down, trying to get that lead. As we do see Zimbel now overtaking Reinders for third place, and the Porsche is back up, going a little bit wide though, out of that first turn. Will keep the lead, but has to be careful because he's about to lose it if he's not careful with the next turn.
Yeah, it's a bit of a wobble as well. You can see flicking the steering left and right, wobbling that Porsche once he got back onto track. So, not sure if there's a signal or anything to be made of that. But either way, the drivers are either finding their own space, or they are still continually having to fight and put that pressure on. And they're going to be exerting themselves quite hard at this point, because they haven't got that free space if they're having to deal with their opponents. And even if you have got free space, you're dealing with traffic around yourself, either being overtaken or overtaking slower cars. There's no real rest.
Now looking at the standings currently, we see in P45 there's a Ferrari who is well, trying to get past these GT4s, as this appears to be for position, but it's not really just yet, as they're in P45 and an entire lap behind the rest of the GT4s, making their way through the grid now, but looking to unlap themselves, as they were part of an early pit stop maneuver, I should say, from that we saw from a few drivers. And yeah, this is what I was talking about. The GT3s just have to get past those GT4s, and luckily they all set a lap time, and that's not the case for most of these drivers. But having this small incident in the beginning messes you up way more than being left behind a little bit later on in the race.
They can hopefully afford to peel back on some of the time that has been lost, but if you get into an incident early in the event, then you are in quite a bit of trouble, because yes, you can peel it back, but I think most importantly, that is going to take a big hit to your motivation. It's going to look like such an uphill battle when you're having to deal with potentially 2.5 hours of an event that's just going to feel like making up lost time.
Yeah, definitely a mental battle in that regard, especially if you're alone in a team. And luckily there's a lot of teams that are running multiple drivers, but like Zimbo in third place in that Porsche, getting first place must feel fantastic into turn 1, but dropping down to P4 within a few laps, that must make a giant dent in, like you said, the motivation, into your confidence. If you're losing positions left, right, and center as a solo team, and no one there basically to either take over or to cheer you on, hype you up, and help you out and support in this event. So 3 hours, a long time, of course, and one incident won't define anything. And especially this early on in the race, lots of time to be made up for in the next 2.5 hours.
Yeah, the drivers have got a long event ahead of them, but the important thing now is they set themselves up for success later on. Whether you are carrying yourself or you have teammates to deflect later stints to, the important thing right now is you get a feel for the track, you start to put some decent distance down, some decent laps down, and more than anything else, just stay out of trouble. That I cannot stress enough, because to have trouble so early, as we've unfortunately seen with a couple of drivers who have found themselves in a spot of bother, to have that is going to be a serious detriment to any stints that come after, not just the current.
Yeah, and if you start off this race by taking a little bit too much of a risk and accidentally tapping someone in the side, or getting tapped in the side because you have made a mistake, that's going to cause some damage to the car that you'll have to repair after 45 minutes. because that is what the stint timer allows you to. Maybe 40 minutes to cut those few laps off with that little bit of a margin that we talked about earlier. But having that damage for your entire first stint, that's going to cause a lap time loss all across the board for your entire first 45 minutes. It's a quarter of the race that you're driving with a damaged car, and maybe even messing up your tires, because sliding, going over bumps, it causes tire damage, pressure loss. Everything can account to some lap time loss, and especially taking those risks early is not really something you can afford. 3-hour race, it's long enough to find your spot, find your pace, and see who your opponents are, because chances are where you qualify, those aren't even going to be your opponents later on in the race.
And that self-preservation aspect is something that separates enduros from maybe smaller events. It's understanding that it's, without liking to use cliches, it is a marathon, it's not a sprint. You can get really good positions early on, but if that's at the cost of your car, your tires, and really degrading that machine underneath you, that's going to bite your team back when it comes to later stints. And they're going to have to soak up those time losses elsewhere. It's almost as if stacking up a bit of debt and then you have to pay that back at a later time. You can burn early, or you can be consistent all the way through, and you don't have to worry about that overhead looming.
Well, like you said, it's a cliche, but they're cliches for a reason. They happen a lot, and you have to be careful with them. As currently the GT4s are having quite a good battle currently for third place in class. The 412 car, the McLaren, getting past the 411 BMW. And some of the GT3s were passing. There's a small train from 4th to 6th. They're holding it quite well. Not much shuffling, but this BMW just chasing down the McLaren into those final few turns. And it's looking fantastic in these GT4s already. I've been looking a lot at the GT3s, as we should, as Reiner is now taking the place from Zimbel, side by side now on their way to turn 4. Zimbel's gone ahead once again. The 103 Porsche just taking the lead, but the slipstream being taken. Look on the inside for the Ferrari. Is it going to be a late break? Yes, it is, but not late enough. The Porsche cutting across the side, hopping it on the apex and staying ahead. A little bit wider exit and taking a bit more speed, and that is the 103 car still ahead, still in P3.
It was pushing the boundaries, pushing the limits. And this is certainly going to be a battle to keep an eye on, as these two have been certainly pushing each other to the limit for a few laps now. It's been an up and down battle for them. They've kept each other on the, well, on their toes. There's no really other way to say it. And even look at the Porsche now. He's taking slightly wider lines. He's trying to re-establish a firm grip on the racing line, but he's always having to look in that rear view mirror. He's having to play a little bit defensive because he knows even the slightest opportunity in that Ferrari is going to strike.
We've said for the past few laps, but I think it's been well for the past 20 minutes. These drivers, as soon as they got into these positions, the Porsche dropped down to P4. Ever since he dropped down to P4, they've been trying to make their way back up and doing so pretty well, I would say. Running some good laps, equal on pace with everyone around them, as they've been in this train for a while, but they've been pushing ever since they lost that P2. And it's been a battle between these 4 cars, the 103, 102, 114 and 105, and nothing's really changing too much. Maybe one car overtaking the other here, or a small overtake there, but they've always been trading places. So the 103 and 102 have been fighting, and the 114 and the 105 have been fighting, but there hasn't been much shuffling in between there. So they're just maybe taking those slipstream, taking your advice and reading it's not a sprint, it's a marathon. Stay clean now, follow the rest, maybe save a little bit of fuel as you can take a slipstream, and then get a lighter car for the next stint.
Yeah, play into the hands of your teammates. We see this is Hartmann checking in with the GT4s a little bit. We've been a bit too GT3 centric as of late, but Kiss is on the back in the Mercedes. You can see just the determination of the drivers, even by the micro movements of their car. They peek left, right, they look for any ample opportunity to just get by, have a chance at position, and it can also just indicate how much they've been fighting up to that point. Now, I would not be surprised if Hartmann and Kiss have been very close to each other for a long time now, and eventually even the most patient of drivers have their limits.
I did see that Hartmann was moving towards the inside of the track a little bit earlier than ideal. Of course, we saw the Mercedes staying towards the outside of the track in turn 3 and 4 for just a tiny bit longer, trying to get that optimal line, and Hartmann just peeking a little bit further towards the inside, trying to cover something off that the Mercedes might throw their way. And that's the defensive part. That's how you can see that the driver is being careful of what the car behind is doing in those crucial overtaking zones, turn 3 and turn 4. So they've just maybe covered off a tiny bit of the inside. Don't want to go fully defensive, because that's how you lose the time. If the car behind doesn't send it and you're going defensive, you are losing time. The car behind is only gaining. So a slight move towards the inside right before you start braking. That's how you can see that Hartmann is currently on his toes, on the edge of his seat. Well, I hope he's in the back, because that drives a little bit safer, a little bit nicer, more comfortable. But he is on edge, and he's trying to defend as subtly as he can.
And you really have to treat that car like an extension of the driver. So if you see them going for those kind of moves, or alternatively defending against those kind of moves, it speaks to their current mindset and where their priorities are right now. And we see a classic situation coming up where we have Hartmann coming up on Alexander Dubs, and this is where a unique question starts to form, one that a lot of the drivers have contended with up and down the circuit time and time again. Do you go aggressive? Do you attack and potentially gain a position but leave yourself open? Or do you play it safe and then make sure that you keep your current position by staying more defensive? It's that balance and where you stand on the line, how well you can hold to that line, that is pretty determinate of your results here. So you have to make, again, those decisions time and time again, and hundreds of those decisions over the course of just a stint, let alone a whole event.
I do think it's a bit easier to choose in multi-class racing, especially GT3s and GT4s. The GT4s, tiny bit slower. The GT3s have to punch their way through. And as we said in qualifying, it's the job of the faster class car to make a safe overtake, to make the move. But that means that as GT4, you're not allowed to defend. So if there's a space open, if you're so close to the GT3 and the inside is being thrown by the GT3, and that means that the car ahead that you're fighting has to leave the inside open, you might be able to squeeze right on by or gain a little bit of time. So following the faster class car, following that GT3 through the overtake that they're doing, through the lapping, is maybe a thing that the GT4 drivers are going to be looking out for, going to be checking, see if they can maybe utilize some of the lapping cars as maybe even a slipstream as well, as we said in the qualifying session as well. Maybe just taking every little bit of advantage that they can get. And of course, attacking means losing time on to some extent, and maybe allowing the car behind to pass right on through. So that's it's obviously going to be a conundrum for all of these drivers if they're in a battle, and especially from P2 to P4 in the GT4s. They're all within a few tenths of each other, all within a second. And every single one of them will be looking ahead and looking behind, trying to see what the best course of action is.
Yep, and it's all about just finding that right balance, finding that course of action that is going to be paramount here. Again, you're playing the bigger team game. You're not just considering, thread the needle much. That's Nowski. You said right there, it's the responsibility of the GT3s to get past safely. But look at Schenkenberger and Nowski just making quick work of the two GT4s currently fighting. That's Schmidt and Rios. That was certainly something. I have to admit, I clenched a little bit. I clenched a little bit there. I was getting a bit nervous. I wasn't expecting Nowski to thread the needle.
There was absolutely no hesitation by Nowski. That 107 Ford, absolutely wild to make that move happen. In between two GT4s, that's something that you don't even get the room most of the time to make a move like that. But to pull it off that cleanly, it's absolutely amazing. Very, very good to watch.
You saw Lucas just behind, having to go with a very wide line to get past both of the GT4s, and it lost a fair bit of time with that. He's now on the precipice of a second, and we're seeing much of a similar story. Is going to be Schwarzman going alongside the Mustang of Caricas right here, making their way both up. A little bit of contact there, bit of a bump on each other's fenders. Turn 4, 5. So very, very much locked horns. Caricas and Schwarzman Still fighting for the same space of track. McLaren currently holds the apex. Oh, a little bit of lift-off oversteer, it looks like, barely getting it back under control. 720S having to tuck back into 6th for the time being.
And we saw a small brake tap from the Ford as they were going into the left-hander all the way down. This is the GT4 that's just walked right into the wall. Appears to be the Mercedes of Winkler, currently 35th, the 407. It's made contact with the wall and is now being overtaken or being lapped by these two cars. But we saw the Ford up ahead just tapping the brakes a little bit more, trying to get that
See, this is Winkler just making their way up here now, and oh, there you go. That is a heavy hit into the wall there. It's dealing with a bit of GT3 issues. And back to the live right now, as we do have quite an interesting battle that is certainly going to be brewing soon. And it's in the GT4 direction. I look at Kefa and Zabo. They are in close quarters, albeit having been displaced by some of the GT3s and their times being up in the air, along with Kefa a bit further away. I think these GT4s could be converging fairly soon, although we are coming up to stint timer. This could be a crucial point here for setting up the rest of the race.
And one thing to clarify a little bit is that we have two drivers with the same last name, and we have Daniel and we have David currently surrounding Sabo. So like you said, Keffer in 28th, but also in 30th. So Zabo is currently in a Keffer sandwich, trying to make something out of it, currently getting lapped by a Porsche GT3. And this train is still for 3rd place in the GT4 category, with Busak currently with a 20-second lead from the looks of it, or close to that, as my telemetry is actually dropping down quite a bit. So that's a problem in my data. It's about 10 seconds in the end, and it's dropping right back up again. So Busak with a giant lead, actually, all more commonly seen in track space. From turn 3 down to turn 4 is the lead that Busak currently has on the rest of the grid.
Yeah, it's completely open. It looks almost marooned on that track there. He's not got any drivers to contest with. And as boring as it may feel, this is perfect. For him, it is absolutely perfect. He's got no drivers to worry about. He can just effectively focus in on putting down the best times possible. He can go mentally into a sort of hot lap mode, and that will save him a lot of time in the long run.
There's currently no GT3s close even. The 107 of Nowski is currently on the exit of turn 8 on his way to turn 9, whereas Busak is now coming up to the straight, to the start finish line. So the GT3s are just able to lap him so easily, as he's the only car there, like we saw with Nowski, having 2 cars and having to thread the needle or passing 2 cars at the same time is going to be very, very difficult. But 1 car is very, very manageable for those GT3s to pass. So they'll be very happy with Busak having such a big lead. And Busak's going to be happy to just let them by. He's got such a big lead. He knows that he has the pace. And I do believe that he is currently running solo in this race. So he knows that he has to get the pace himself and not push him to the absolute limit every single lap. And of course, have that marathon mindset. But letting these GT3s pass, it's going to be an easy job for him. And he doesn't have to worry about cars behind passing through either. He's all the way in his own space.
He's got to keep things open. And right now, the field is starting to, short of a couple of battles, really starting to space out, something I've noticed. They're taking up about 2/3 of the track end to end. But the field is really just opening up at this point, and this is where we're going to start to see drivers considering, at least within the next few minutes, they're going to be looking at when that stint timer clocks in and when those drivers come in, who's going to be coming out, how acclimatized are they going to be to the car, how quickly can they get back to full speed running.
So about 13 minutes remaining, and how many laps is that? I can't count actually. I forgot to count the amount of laps that we have in the stint. 23 laps done, 24th currently being completed by the leaders out in front. And yeah, they'll have about 12.5 minutes remaining on this stint. And Gonna see who gets those undercuts and who gets the overcuts done. So I'm curious to see if there's drivers that will be running 50 minutes or maybe even a tiny bit longer to maybe cut down on some later stints, because that's of course what you want to do, is less fuel, cleaner tires for your final stint. And I'm really, really curious to see what the strategies are going to be.
The strategies are going to be a key factor, but as things currently stand, the drivers are pushing hard nonetheless. Now, we do have a couple, remember, who took those earlier pit stops due to incidents, and this will have a distinct impact on them as things progress. My question is, how will those drivers who have already taken a stop compete? Will they have to still adhere to those same stint timers, even if they've technically already pitted in, or is that timer effectively reset up to 48 minutes?
Well, as soon as you get into the pits and leave, as you get into the pits, the timer stops. Even if you're 2 seconds and you're not in the box yet, as soon as you enter the pits, cross the pit line, where of course the detection is for speed, the stint timer pauses completely. And it gets reset as soon as you exit once again. So everyone who's had that first stint, the first stop after the first 2 laps, they've reset their stint timer to, again, those 48 minutes as soon as they exit the pits for their after their stop. So they'll be about 5 minutes after the rest of the grid has to stop, they'll have to stop. And they can, of course, stay out for a little bit longer, but I think they might just be, they might actually be pushing towards the end, because like I said, getting your final stint as short as possible means that you have the best looking tires towards the end. So pushing those 48 minutes is going to be optimal for a lot of these drivers who are focusing on their final stint. It's not going to be optimal for drivers like Nowski. He's got the 109 Ferrari on his rear bumper for basically the majority of this first stint. If he gets undercut at all at this point, it's going to be over for him. Because look at the pace. He doesn't have the pace to run away. He's going to be fighting all the way to the end if he matches the pits. And I believe that the 109 Ferrari, he's going to be just looking to get the undercut done. But he can't undercut too far because you don't have that many minutes to play around. So it's all within those fine margins. And I do think Lucas is going to drop it into the pits somewhere in the next 10 minutes.
So how well you can run within those margins is critical here. And within the next few laps, the drivers will be butting heads with that stint timer, meaning they will have to decide how close to the edge they are going to go. The more they can extract from these early stints, the more wiggle room they have towards later ones, and the more they can push those tires, as you said, to the very end in the best condition you possibly can. Because having better tires towards the end, it means that any positions you need to gain or to keep, it's going to be a little bit easier. Those tenths of a second that the tires contribute towards may be crucial. And the track temperature is dropping. The winds are picking up. The conditions could change under your nose as well.
Yeah, we see in the prediction on the top right of your screen, there's clouds everywhere. It was nice and sunny at the race start. Now 40 minutes later, lots of clouds. They started to set in about 50 minutes into the race, and now they suddenly changed to fully cloudy. Like you said, track temperature drops down as well. It was about 34 degrees, if I remember correctly. It's now 28 degrees. Or was it 31? I can't remember exactly, but it was somewhere in the 30s, and it's now down to 28 degrees. That's going to be cooling down the tires a bit. The drivers will have to play around with those pressures as they go in for their stops. And of course, clouds usually means rain. And I'm very, very certain that we're going to get rain at some point in this race. If it's already getting cloudy now, I can only hope that the rain is going to make a play. And that, of course, is going to throw everyone off their game. It's going to be a different game altogether in terms of pace. Because, of course, if you practice a lot in the dry, you'll be fast in the dry, but you won't be quick in the wet. And it's the drivers that have mastered both of these aspects that are going to have the advantage. And on top of that, all of your pit stop timing is going to be out of the window. Because as soon as you pit for those wets halfway through your stint, you're going to have half a stint towards the end as well to deal with. So it's going to be crazy altogether once that weather changes. And looking at the clouds, I sure hope that it's going to rain.
And an interesting point you bring up, and we can kind of expand on when it comes to qualifying, is that consistency. One thing that I noticed with some of our qualifiers and some of their qualifying times is even if they weren't peak pace and setting new records, they were within a tenth of each other. Those deltas dancing, as you said so eloquently earlier, dancing on the edge of faster and slower and the 0.0. They have the consistency, and that is what's going to matter so much here in this event. When it comes to wet weather running, the drivers will have a more difficult time than if it was the other way around. They're having to peel back, they're having to let go and not push as hard in order to keep those cars under control. And it also brings an element of strategy. When do you pit in when it comes to the wet weather and getting the necessary wet weather tires equipped? How do you play that out? How do you manage your car and not get overzealous with that throttle pedal?
And I think that's something that we'll have to find out as soon as the rain falls, especially in that crossover period. Of course, going to be a question of who pits when. And speaking of pits, the first drivers have gone in. We see the 108 car currently in 24th place is the first car in to stop. They're already back out. We see the 118 car also went in for their stop and back out again. The 113 just exiting the pits. And the 104 car also out. Very, very quick pit. Only 28 seconds for the 104 car. And I do believe 28 seconds is too quick for changing tires. So they must have gone another stint on these tires. And that's exactly what I was looking for. These drivers that are opting for the alternate strategy. Because usually you go in, you take a new set of tires, you fuel all the way up. It takes about 30 seconds, or exactly 30 seconds, and you head back out. But 28 seconds is not long enough to get those tires on. So Tempest in that 104 Ford has not taken clean tires, and that's evident by their pit timer, and they are going to be double stinting this tire.
Yeah, risky play, I gotta say. I would expect him to get on something fresh.
Yeah, it is the normal strategy to go on clean tires. Everyone usually does that, because with a 48-minute stint timer, or about 40 minutes as they're doing it here, you'd be driving about 80 minutes on a single tire. Usually, after an hour or 70 minutes, 65 minutes, they're absolutely gone. You're sliding on ice. But maybe they're looking at rain as well. Maybe they're hoping for the rain and taking these tires all the way to the end for another 20 minutes, even though they still have about 40 minutes on their stint time. So it's going to be curious to see how fast they will start sliding towards the end of this tire life.
Yeah, they will be pushing the boundaries on those tires if they are opting to take them out as long as they did. But the main thing right now is that drivers are having to pick out their timings for pit stops. It's just picking out when they are going and when they are going to be coming out. In particular, you don't want to be coming out into too much traffic. That could really hinder your progress up to top position once again.
Currently, we do see that Tempest in the 104 Ford, the leaders of the drivers that have stopped. Just the 402 car, that's one of the GT4s in the pits, the first GT4 to enter the pit lane, but the 104 car on their way to get a bit more traffic on his way. He's got a good gap now where he can maybe get back onto the pace, heat up the tires properly without the traffic that we were talking about. But he's got a big stream of GT4s ahead of him. And then there's also the case of the 122 car, who is on his way to unlap himself or get past the leader in the GT4, has unlapped himself from a couple of cars as well, and is now jumping up the charge, joining back on the back of the GT3s. And after that first stop from the rest of the grid, we are seeing some more coming in. And that's Nowski in the box, as well as Lucas in the 109 Ferrari. So the top drivers are in the box. It does look like Nowski's a little bit faster into the box, as the box is a little bit closer to the start of the line. It's going to be neck and neck to see who gets the exit. A few more seconds and then the Ford will start driving again. And there we go, being released now. Looking at the Ferrari up ahead, still stationary, not moving. And that's Nowski getting the lead there. And it's very, very close. Ferrari in that rear view. And as close as they were on track, that is how close they are coming out of the pits. 32 seconds for both of these drivers. Both cars have taken some new tires. And Nowski has given the wheel to his teammate David, and it's going to be taking that race to the Andre in the 109 Ferrari. So both teams having a driver swap, tire swap, and refuel, and they're ready to fight it out once again.
Yep, fresh drivers, fresh names, but this also means fresh opportunity for the drivers to get some chances at attacking. These racers who have swapped in for their teammates, they won't be warmed up in the same way. They won't have 40 minutes of wheel under their belt, 40 minutes of battling under their belt. So we're now going to see a bit of a dynamic change, I think, as this session goes on.
And this is the limit of what the drivers can do. 48 minutes means that they have to stop within now and 1 minute 38:37. That's when they have to be in the pit lane. So you're going to see a lot of the front runners currently dropping into the pits. Reinders in the 102 leading the pack as is, with Zimbal right behind the Porsche. Net 4th place, currently trying to get past the Mercedes into turn 4, trying to get a lapped car out of the way. One of the GT4s. They have to go into the pits. There's no way they can do another lap. 48 minutes means that 2 minute 12, they have to be in the box, or at least in the pit lane, and they can't do another lap. So these two are forced to lap on the exact same time, on the exact same lap, or pit at the exact same lap, and there's no room for over or undercuts at this point. So they're forced to stick together, and then it's the question: do you take the tires and, you know, pay a few more seconds to get those clean tires, or do you stay out with the same tires? As there's a lot of GT4s, and that's the gap that's being created. Reinders ahead of a GT4 on their way into the box, and this is chaos going into the line. The 103 car actually slotting in right behind, and it's very, very close. The GT4 is moving out of the way just a tiny bit to let these two fight it out as close as possible.
Chaotic, I think, is an understatement for a second there. It looks like Reinders was really going for it on the grass, just trying to put a GT4 between himself and his opponent. That was briefly quite scary. I thought he was going to lose the tail, but he kept it together, and he did end up putting at least one of the GT4s between the two.
And now it's all eyes to the 107 Ford and the 109 Ferrari on their way to lap some more GT4s and maybe get the undercut and gain a bit more time compared to the drivers behind, like the 103 Porsche currently leaving the pits. We do see that they are way past, and the gap is only getting bigger. We do see them drive out of the pits in the distance. Not yet. There we go. You see them leave the pits now. The 102 Ferrari is out, and it does look like there's a Ford, the 105, who's crawled up to the back of the 103 Porsche. So we do see some more names being thrown into the battle, and it's all closed down again from P3 down to P6. It's very, very close.
Well, you can see Schwarzman immediately going on the challenge and not taking that one so lightly, because he's had some time out on the current stint already. And the Mustang is going to be really pushing for the edge of that track. Bit of a corner tap there from the 720S, and not going to be giving so much breathing room as the GT3s would normally like. He's going to hold on to the apex. Contact once again. That is Juntvicius taking the 105 Mustang wheel. Schwarzman still on the chase, having warmed up by this point, is looking antsy. He's really wanting to take that spot, and this is slowing the both of them down.
Yeah, and starting in P7, the 114 car has already gained a 1 place from their starting position, and but they're looking to gain a little bit more. The 105 Ford, though, the great move that they did out of the pit lane, getting close enough to get that overtake done. They've jumped up 6 places from the start, from 11th all the way up to 5th. And that's a great start if I've ever seen one. First stint completed very, very neatly. But now the McLaren is on its way to chase down the Ford once again and maybe take back that place within the next few laps.
It's certainly got a bit of a chip on the shoulder, I think, so trying to take those spots and wanting nothing but the best, as this next stint is now getting underway. Lap 33 and counting here at the ACC Drive in Enduro, and it's looking like a lot of traffic once again building up. Those stints changing means that more and more cars have converged together Battles in GT4, battles in GT3, all kicking off same time, same place. You see even 3, almost as much as 4 wide. The 2 McLarens in GT4 briefly come together. That's Robel and Foulouse in the 412 and 409, respectively.
It's chaos once again with these GT3s trying to unlap them, or trying to lap themselves from those GT4s. A little bit squirrely from the 114 McLaren. Losing a bit of time in the Ford 105, able to pull away from that. Was that dirty air from that GT4 that caught this McLaren off guard and pushed him a few seconds further behind? We'll never know. We'll have to look at the replay if that's the case. But Schwartzman definitely a little bit squirrely on the exit and is trying to chase down that Ford once again, as he's been dropped back a tiny bit. But from the looks of it, I think there's only one more GT4 right up ahead that they have to chase down and have to pass. And after that, it's all clean air. That is Leibner in the 416 McLaren that's currently in the way. There's 2 of them, as Caver is also somewhere there. So Sabo is already behind these guys that are fighting for the position. So it's only 2 more GT4s to pass, and then it's free reign again for the GT3s to be able to fight all of their battles out on their own.
Yes, Daniel Keffer and Leibner having a bit of GT3 traffic trouble, but they know how to quickly displace from the others. And looking like the Mustang making quick work of it all. Is the same courtesy going to be showing the McLaren? Yes, it is, heading into downhill right-hander now. And as we look across the different fields, one thing is becoming clear. The GT4s are just trying to keep a calm race. They have very much spaced out from each other now. The Stints have brought some of them closer together, but others even further apart. But the GT3s, that is nothing but net, nothing but action and chaos all up and down. I mean, take a quick look. This is going to be the 107 and 109 remaining close together. No love lost between them as they continue to be within a couple of tenths of each other.
We've seen the previous 2 drivers of these teams fight it out already. Now with fresh blood behind the wheel, are we going to see something crazy coming up? And we do see Tempest into the pits. The 104 car is in early. That is the Ford that, like I said, didn't take tires, is in just a few laps after he stopped before. This stint has only lasted a little bit shorter. Yeah, they are stopping once again.
Interesting. I think, yeah, that failure to grab tires, or that choice not to grab tires, has somewhat backfired here. Doesn't seem to be the strategy that they should have gone for in the end, if it is indeed a strategic decision. And as you said,
I did happen to check their stint timers, and it appears that they have been one of the teams that were into the first rounds of pit stops about 10 to 15 minutes into the race. So they actually pitted earlier than everyone else, and they were now onto their limit of their stop. It just looked like they were stopping with the rest of the pack, but they were actually limiting their stint time, and they're actually on their pit stop now. So they are back into action on sync with the rest, just only about 10-15 minutes later on the pits. But this is it was not the fact that they didn't grab tires, it was because they already had an earlier pit stop had done. So that's a mistake on my end. I forgot to check the stint timer when I checked for the pits. But Morant's now taken the wheel from Tempest and is now going to be driving that 104 into a recovery drive into P23 at the moment, starting in P10. They're definitely going to be looking to get that car back where it belongs.
Well, certainly got an uphill battle ahead of them, but I wish them nothing but the best, as things are still pretty intense up and down this order. Timo Schaff is going to be in the number 106 car. This is the Mercedes AMG, as Simic in the 112 Mustang is going to be right in the crosshairs. And there is going to be plenty of pressure being piled on right now.
And there's battles everywhere, especially in these corners. Like we said during qualifying, that's a quick cut towards the inside by the Mercedes. That's a good exit as well. The Ford, the power just not there. The Mercedes able to rival that. And there's 2 GT4s right up ahead, side by side and side by side. Is it going to be 4 wide into turn 4? They don't dare, do they? No, they don't. Ford stays behind. and the 106 Mercedes. Quick cut out of turn 3 towards the inside did make the move happen. That was an amazing job done. Good opportunistic movement from Schaff in the 106 Mercedes.
And seriously impressed with all the GT3s and GT4s thus far, because even just an hour into this 3-hour event, they really are showing what makes them some of the best of the best. They are showing us that they know how to hold down the battles, and they know how to keep a consistent run even in the face of masses of pressure. This is certainly impressive to watch from my end, and we're staying on board with Schaff and Simic, but the battle continues up and down the order.
And there's a little bit of info. We saw the first few laps out of this stint from the front runners not even get close to their fastest laps. Their fastest being into the 27s, and they were all doing mid-28s. Thought it was curious, especially with the temperatures dropping. They should theoretically be a little bit faster, and that actually is the case now, because the 107 Ford has just put in their personal best of the race, a 127.8, and the same goes for the 109. They also went for a 27.8, so they're ramping up the pace now. Of course, different drivers, different paces, but it's very interesting to see how close these drivers get to their teammates in terms of pace. Absolutely amazing to see. Like you said, a high level. This is split one for a reason.
Oh, this is seriously impressive driving, and we're on board with Heim in the Ginetta. I have a soft spot for a Ginetta. I do have to be honest. It's one of those cars you don't really see, but you always got to commend the person who does take it.
There's always one driver in the GT4s, one team that chooses the Ginetta. And I also have to say, it's a small soft spot as he's trying to get past this Mercedes, the 414 car, defending on the inside. The Ginetta able to take the outside, sweeping around. Still side by side, will have to take that outside line onto turn 4. No way to duck back into the inside. Mercedes has to take that shorter run, those smaller radiuses, if the Ginetta can't get past fully. He's trying to send it. Who is going to break later? Will that be the Mercedes or the Ginetta? Still side by side on the right hand there. No one giving an inch. The Ginetta maybe taking a bit more speed out of it. Has the inside for the next 2 turns. The places where overtaking is going to be a little bit easier, I would say. It's very difficult to stay and hang on around the outside. And there it is, the position gained by the Ginetta. The Mercedes is still really close though, but there's a GT3 trying to throw some dust into their eyes. Getting past and no space being given. A little bit wide though, as the Ginetta will be holding onto the inside. The Porsche coming in through as well, as that is the 103 car going in between, and this livens up the battle once again. Ginetta, no space given, will be taking that inside line, and there's contact. That's the Mercedes being sent all the way to the outside. Position lost, fight over, and the next Aston Martin will be on their way to claim that place, that P41.
Yeah, and it's a similar story up further. This is Meerman and Corner with the 417 and 418 Mercedes and McLaren respectively. They hold firm to their positions, but a interesting thing to note is that throughout all of this, Busak is still up on top of the GT4s and currently holds a seriously substantial 25-second gap to Daniel Keffer, currently in second. So again, showing that sort of hot lap mentality, it's really been immense to see him build that gap over time. And we will see things continue in the GT3s too. Hip off in the 109, chasing that Mustang. Again, it's almost like they have never stopped since the very start. But these really are 2 drivers who are hungry for victory and will stop at nothing.
These margins are getting smaller and smaller. You actually see the Ford looking towards the inside a bit to defend, goes back all the way to the limit of the track to get the best line going. But yeah, like you said, they've been going at it since the start of this race, ever since the 107 Ford got the lead back from starting in pole position. They have stopped at nothing to keep everything and everyone behind. Ferrari just grasping at straws at the moment, is looking towards the inside, sending a little sight, a little love note through those mirrors, but it's not getting received. The Ford just stays ahead, even with just taking the normal lines. Yes, they're looking towards the inside. Yes, they're holding a tiny bit, but look at this. They're just calmly taking the outside, the normal racing line, out, in, out, through all of these turns, and they're just staying ahead. This Ford is just staying in front, and I've got no clue how they're doing it, but they're doing an amazing job at keeping everyone behind without even needing to defend that hard. It's absolutely crazy. Very, very insane with these margins.
I think it's just also a game of positioning as much as it is a game of pace. I mean, look very closely at how he balances that Mustang's position. He's not deviating too much from the racing line, but he's keeping a constant eye on where that 109 Ferrari is going. He's keeping a very close monitor, and with that is going to be micro adjustments, nothing major, and again, committing to it before you brake. No moving under braking to be seen here, but is still going to be just eagerly watching, making sure he doesn't go too offline, but at the same time is covering off options. He's holding those inside lines. He's keeping just a little bit more of the turning on the exit of the corner than on the start to just keep that Ferrari on its toes.
And it's also just problematic for these drivers if they're fighting more than they are right now. I believe that the 109 Ferrari is just contently staying behind a little bit more than they are actively pushing this Ford to its limits. I guess seen from the lines that the Ford is able to take, the cars behind are not catching up at all. The lap times are pretty similar, 28.1, 28.2 for P1 and P2, and then P3 is also running in a 28.2 with P4 and a 28.3. So the lap times are so similar, almost identical even. As there's contact into turn 1, the GT4 is getting a bit squirrely there, trying to find out who actually gains the place and who has to lose one. These front runners are all in the same pace. The gaps don't change.
Yeah, there's just keeping a constant equilibrium, and then nobody is going to be the big jump. Oh, contact once again. Ginetta and Aston, this time Ben being pushed much further out wide and having to yield back within a couple of tenths. So these drivers in the GT4s are hungry for it. GT3s are hungry for it. The fight is on, and the racers are getting very antsy as pressure is mounting to almost a fever pitch, particularly at the lower end of the slower group.
Yeah, this Ginetta is making jumps through the grid. They started in P42, just gained 2 places compared to the start, but I do believe they've made a few more jumps in this go-in. There's some GT3s trying to make their way on through, but Heim currently in that 406 Ginetta, just trying to keep all the cars behind. Small chain now as Stratman is gone past the Aston Martin and is now up to P42, as we do see some more fighting as well further up. So these GT4s are waking up now. Big gaps in the front of the GT4, but like I said, the back of this GT4 grid is nothing short of action, and everyone is going for it. Absolutely amazing.
But I mean, look at the 419 McLaren right now. So that is on Jürgen, currently in the BMW and dealing with the GT3 threat as well as the GT4 one. He's got serious pressure on him to put a good lap down, and Joao's not leaving anything to chance here. You can see the GT3's behind, doesn't care. He's going for the ideal line regardless. He knows the GT will get past. That Porsche is going to be just fine, and Jürgen is very much in the sights in the number 420, but as soon as he gets close, feels like he gets further away and doesn't have the chance again.
And chances may come later on once the weather is going to change a bit. Still cloudy after the first hour. Temperatures are dropping, and the wind has actually died down a tiny bit, as it's currently 4 kilometers an hour, half of what it was just 15 minutes ago. And the direction is all changing. It's impacting the aerodynamics ever so slightly coming into certain corners, especially up to turn 3 and also down into turn 4. They have to be careful with high wind speeds. These don't really do too much just yet, but with the clouds, you might see some more wind coming in soon. And like I said before, I'm just hoping for rain somewhere in this race to shake things up a little bit more than it is already, because these GT4s out in front, we can see that Busak is currently miles and miles ahead of the next driver. An entire sector I should say, is the lead of the 401 car, and the rest out in front is there's one small gap, and the rest is all over a second and a half, 2 seconds, and a little bit of rain might just do it well to bunch it all back up together and give some more good fights in the GT4 category.
Forecast remains overcast, but the track temperatures have dropped by another degree. Peak of 31 degrees on track surface, now down to a humbling 27. And every degree counts. It's about how much temperature and energy you can work into those compounds. And that is going to be something that is drastically affected even by just 4 degrees. We're also seeing a bit of drop in the wind, so we're not seeing as many crosswinds as we were at one stage. The wind has got much less aggressive, and that is going to be much more stable when it comes to aerodynamics, because depending on how you've set up your car, some of the attack angles, it's going to be very pitch sensitive, and crosswinds could really upset the balance if you're not careful with how you've dialed it in.
I just saw a little bit of a gap being made between the 102 and the 103 car. The car currently in 3rd place, running away a tiny bit as they look to be getting closer to join this battle for 2nd place. But it appears that they've caught up some traffic, and that gap is starting to close again behind them. And Zimbal is on his way to reclaim that position once again as some more GT3s are shuffling. Schaff is now down a place. The 106 Mercedes just made a jump on one of the other cars before, and now is getting overtaken by Kloppert in the 111 Ferrari, as we see Zois also in the 110 Porsche getting overtaken by the 101 Aston Martin. Going to make their way up. Started in 14th and 13th respectively, so both gaining 5 places on the start. One quick shout out reel to the 125 car. They started in 24th, and they're currently up in 11th place. And if I have to read the driver numbers correctly, it's the lower number you have, the higher you are seated in terms of your rating, and that shows that the 125 car is all the way in the back of the GT3 grid and are now jumping all the way up halfway into the top 10 almost.
Yeah, I just had a quick replay, a little bit of contact being made between Ben and that was the Ginetta. So the aggression continues. That's Ebersheim, and they are currently battling for P40/41, also known as, I believe, Net 15 and 16 within their respective classes. But even at the bottom of GT3, things are pretty spicy and picking up. This is big. Vignoli and Berenz, the 108 and 119 Ferraris, both keeping each other honest as they head through lap 44 into 45 here in just a moment. They'll see each other as a potential for carrying each other through this next stint.
Yeah, that's for about halfway through the 2nd stint, about 20 minutes, about 20 to 25 minutes into everyone's 2nd stint. That means that we only have about 20 to 25 minutes left until the next round of stops. And here again, we're going to check in with the front runners to see who gets the undercut done, because maybe the 107 Ford wants to stop a little bit earlier this time, or the 109 Ferrari will take that undercut. But one thing is for sure, the 401 car of Busak is not slowing down anytime soon. No undercut can take away this ginormous lead this car has created. It's absolutely wild to see him so far up, but there's still a good fight for P3 in the GT4 category. Leibner in the 416 car currently holding Sabo at bay in the 404 car in P4 as it stands in the GT4 category. There's a drive-through being handed to the 412 car, the McLaren in the GT4s, as they'll have to take a little trip through that pit lane.
Yeah, an unfortunate hand being dealt, but it's something they'll have to contend with nonetheless. Szabo is very close now to the other McLaren, and I'd be a little bit wary if I was that 416 right now. You have the 404 McLaren currently chasing you down within a couple of tenths. You've got traffic that will be fairly rapidly approaching as the time comes to it. And when the drivers start to converge like this is when you get some real fireworks going. So we'll see and take care of it as things are going forward. But as things currently stand, let's take a quick review of where the drivers are. We have the number 107 Mustang continuing to lead, followed closely by the number 109 Ferrari. Dennis Reinders in the 102 is going to be about 5 seconds adrift, with Zimbal and Genovicius in 4th and 5th, 103s and 105s. And that is going to be for your GT3s. GT4s is a little bit of a different story. As mentioned, Busak in the 401 is currently the car to beat, with a monumental 26-second gap to the next closest car. They may be tailing by an Aston Martin, but that is currently lapped traffic. Daniel Keffer 26.5 seconds away, and Jim Leibner in the 411 and 416 cars respectively for second and third, although Zabo looks to be making a quick change on that, as the 404 and then a bit further away the 403 of David Keffer, 4th and 5th. They will be potential challengers as things progress here. Junker in the 113, Aston Martin, both of them in the black and purple Fisher Racing. So very striking visual design. Very nice looking cars. See what's going on up and down this field as racers are showing their stuff. So Zabo could be going for it here, and oh no, Zabo is actually off the track. So we'll take a bit of a replay, seeing exactly what happened here. So let's take a little bit of a play-by-play. So first off, you have Zabo currently chasing down Jim Leibner and the number 416 McLaren, heading their way into the second sector of the track. Leibner going very wide as they go down the hill. They start to peel up side by side, but here comes a GT3. That's the 101. That is a contact being made as they almost get pinched there. So Brenham is going to be upsetting that dynamic quite substantially in the end. That is Zabo being left out to dry and got a lot of work to do. 2.2 seconds of work to be precise to catch back up. Robel in the 409 could be seeing a similar fate. McLaren v Aston this time, David Keffer in the crosshair. GT3s also duking it out. That's Vimoza and Muller. 125 and 117. You can see them battling and dueling in the background as the Porsche just gets by for P10. Facing off against one another in earnest. And Muller is going to be in the background of this all, but the two of them starting to space away. See, there's GT3 and GT4 traffic coming through. Van Zeta, Joao in the number 419 McLaren, with the Meerman in the background, closing in about half a second away. There's the number 420 as well. And that, I do believe, is Jürgen. So a three-way fight could be on the cards here. Looking absolutely rapid as the session now progresses. We're getting towards the latter half of the second stint, and the drivers are very anxiously considering their next moves. Side by sides, up and down the track, constant judging of your opponents as you try to gauge who's going to go where. Rumble with Müller, Vimoza in the 125 Porsche. Really looking for a chance here to chase and get that P10 back. That could be crucial points in the pocket. Fisher Racing even nothing. It's a chance here. A mistake from the Porsche could be the opportunity that is required. And the field is looking for that chance. Hipov in the 109. Still on the back of the 107 Mustang. After such a strong early outing, these two have kept up the pressure and turned that wick up substantially. Looking fiery, but the field continues. Niels Müller still on the back of the 125 Porsche as things continue. So we've got timing averages of about 128 to 130, and in fact, the front runners are running substantially slower than their best times. We're looking 129.5 last lap from current race leader Akidashvili. So we're starting to see them run out of tyres, maybe lifting and coasting a little bit to do a bit of fuel management. Drivers are feeling that pressure now. Really do want to see them do everything in their power. See, that's almost like it was nothing. GT3 scything their way through the slower pack. Really is scary when you look at them side by side, the pace difference being applied. It is certainly a spectacle, but you've got to hold your nerve if you're a GT4 car in that pack. You really have to hold your nerve. So I'd say it's quite a wary endeavour. See GT3's either side. Ben Rias, sorry, my mistake there. Trial getting very close to the back of Miuman, having lost the position from them earlier on. This is a chance to get back on them, get a bit of a challenge back. See what he can do to re-establish the position.
And the battling out in front has opened up, has closed down the gap a little bit. The 102 Ferrari currently within 3.5 seconds of the 109 car. So the gap that was 6 seconds at first has now closed it back a little bit, and we might see some more fighting later on as we are approaching the end of that second stint.
Well, we're 52 laps and counting, and things are just as hot as they were to start, with Zimbal and Reinders continuing to be in close quarters to each other, and I think in a way pushing each other forward. Usually you'd see these drivers fighting as a means to quickly lose time. I think Reinders is taking that as a opportunity and has used the pressure from behind to drive ahead.
Yeah, you do see drivers sometimes just be generally quicker when there's a car behind them, just pushing them to their absolute limits, and sometimes you don't even want to defend. You want the gap behind to increase, to get bigger, and so you don't need to take those defensive lines, and that's what pushes them to brake later, take those turns with just a tiny bit more speed, and then in turn get those faster lap times. So getting hurried up by the car behind might actually just be a motivational, just a little bit of a help to get you to those faster lap times, and they might just be doing that as their pace is currently surpassing the front runners.
Yeah, and that's the crucial point in here, is that lap-to-lap pace is going to add up over time, and they are outpacing those front runners. We saw last time out the 129.5 from the leaders, and that is stacking up. Now, they have got their pace back under control in the case of P1 and P2. They've just put down some of their fastest laps up until this point, but it's the mistakes. It's how they can very easily both throw each other off in the same way that they can push each other forward is going to be determining whether they keep it a two-horse race or whether they get some unexpected visitors.
And there's also the difference between the number 1 and 2 and the number 3 and 4 currently on the track position. The front two teams are teams, and P3 and P4 are solo drivers. So they can have more consistency in terms of their own pace. They'll have less space to calm down, as that's a small send from the Ferrari on the inside of turn 4. Small send, that's a big send, taking it all the way on the inside towards the end. And that's the overtake done by the 1 and 2, and there's contact between the Ford and the Ferrari, both going, getting away with it. The Ford holding onto that inside line. The 109 Ferrari sticking around the outside and no space being given. The Ford still staying ahead just ever so slightly.
Yeah, so just quick reviewing back of what happens. We didn't quite catch it on the camera. That is going to be the Ferrari poking the nose in, just coming out and into turn sport 5 there. They're having it alongside, a little bit of contact being made, just a bit of bumpiness, but keeping it together otherwise, managing to make it still work. Either way, that is going to be the 107 Mustang retaining the lead, although I think a warning shot from the 109 Ferrari has certainly ruffled his feathers.
Yeah, and going back to the pace that we were talking about right before this battle, that little mistake has caused these two drivers to set the exact same lap time at 129.515. That's something you don't see every day. And they've slowed down by about a second on that lap, which in turn has closed the gap behind by another second. Reinders on the 102 Ferrari on his way. He's did at 129.0, which means that half a second has been gained. And Zimbo getting real close now as well. Did at 28.4, so absolutely closing in, looking to get a cent here done as well.
So looking to get that early push and get that big opportunity, but as things come to push and shove, nobody is willing to yield. They're going to stick those battles out to the bitter end. Same goes with GT4s. As we can see that Szabo now having recovered the 2 seconds they lost, having the altercation with the 101 Aston Martin. Now on the back of Leibniz once again. Now, will it be second verse same as the first, or will they have that final opportunity that they've craved? That chance for position, that potential for P3 in the group. Can it happen?
Oh, while this was all going on, this is a small contact. The Ferrari, you said, is giving a warning shot, and the second shot has been fired. Small contact at the rear of the Ford into turn 10. Just a little bit of a hurry up, saying go faster through this corner or I'll send it on the next lap. And the Ford taking the hurry up to heart, and it's just pushing it on now. The Ferrari, no chance right here into turn 3, but was really close into turn 9 and turn 10.
I'll say first time is a warning shot. Second time is a serious threat to your position. And so I think that the Mustang has truly taken that as the warning that it is saying that right now we have got a proper problem. And oh, saying that, we just saw in the background, that is the Ferrari going sideways, trying to get past the GT4s, squeezing the nose in, and now 1.5 seconds displaces Andrei Hipov in the 109 away from Nakadashvili in the 107 Mustang. Unfortunate chance being stripped away there, but that is the risk you run in a multi-class.
I was looking at it. I saw the 107 Ford getting through this traffic, and I was thinking there is no way this Ferrari can get right on through as well. And he tried to do it, and I saw it coming. I saw the contact happening, and as he drifted sideways, the only thing I thought was the gaps are now getting closer to the cars behind. Like we said, that shootout for maybe getting a fight for second place is gonna come. It's gonna happen. The 102 Ferrari and the 103 Porsche are getting there currently through the first turn, are on their way to chase back up with that Ferrari, because currently Hipov is not on his way to improve. There's only a second to Reinders in third place, and this fight is going to extend down to fourth place.
The queue's being rejoined now, and the fighters being reunited. GT4's playing a small hand in that, but Zimbo, Reinders, Hipov, all currently closer than one might think. Zimbo in particular, as he's kept up pressure lap in, lap out in the 103. Porsche, it's really kept the Ferrari on edge right there, and you can see the two of them will be converging. I think we have a spicy three-way battle on our hands in the next couple of laps or so, but we do see some pit stops starting to happen as Renato Simic in the 112, they are heading into the pit lane.
And they're out already, as that was a drive-through that they had to serve, and that does not reset the stint timer. So they are currently 39 minutes in, 7 minutes remaining on their stint timer, so that drive-through does not reset at all. And looking at the stint timers, the front runners, the front two cars, are almost hitting that 40-minute mark. Actually, they've hit it just now, which means they only have 8 minutes remaining. That is about 5 laps from the top of my head. Whereas the 102 and the 103 car in third and fourth have 3 more minutes, which means 2 extra laps. They can go for 7 more laps, which means that the undercut will be made by the front two runners. But that also means that these are all on equal. The front two are equal, and then the second two are also equal on, and those are the closest battles. As Hip Hop is currently speeding away from the 102 Ferrari of Reinders and trying to catch back up, but 107 Ford must be really, really happy with that small mistake, as he's been pushing this car without any consequence. There's no car behind that can currently send it at any given moment, so he's been feeling that freedom, and he's been very happy driving there.
This is where a fire has been lit under the drivers, and this is in particular for Hip Hop right now. Currently got some time to make up. The leader is getting away from him, but he's not going to let that deter him. He's seen that the opportunity was taken away and has got some work to do. He's embracing it. He's already chipping away 10th by 10th at that gap in just a few brief sections, a few brief corners. He's already brought that down by 0.3 of a second. 1.5 seconds now splitting him and the leader. The delta's dropping. He's looking like a racer on a mission to get that spot back.
And the most important part of that is that P3 and P4 are matching his pace. So P2 all the way down to P4 is having the exact same pace, whereas the 107 Ford is lacking just that tiny bit. Those 3 tenths that you were talking about is what he's lacking.
Yeah, you can see more little escapades as the GT4 is having to deal with some of the traffic around them. The field has done a good job of self-regulating, of not getting too overzealous when it comes to attacking or defending on the other classes, but occasionally you do see, like we saw with the 108 Aston, we do see that, or the 101 Aston, I should say. You do occasionally see where the GT3s think they have a gap, and then that gap closes, and all of a sudden you're in a little bit of trouble. Vignoli in the 108, actually 108 this time, is going to be heading into the pits here. And I think we are starting to come to that crossover point where the stint timers are starting to tick down to 0.
Yeah, like you said, the stint timers dropping down. Vignoli on that limit, 47 minutes and 12 seconds. Only 5 more minutes remaining for the Ford and Ferrari in P1 and P2. So they are going to be closing in. Only 2 laps remaining for them to make their move, make their mark. And on the previous lap, the top 4 have all gone pretty similar in lap times. No real change being made. In the 101, Aston Martin is also going to be going into their stop as they're 41 minutes in. So that is an earlier stop than expected, but they're running on halfway through the race currently with 1 hour and 30 minutes remaining. So that sort of does line up again with only 2 stints remaining as the clouds have gone away a bit. The sun is coming back, but the track temperature is still decreasing as time goes on. It's of course going to be later in the day, 5 p.m. at the moment. So that means that the sun is starting to set. The temperatures are going to be dropping down as Hipov is on his way to close the gap within a second already. As it does look like the 107 Ford has made a small mistake on this lap.
Yeah, to say that, it's Clyde Bixby as well going to be taking a chance as Timo Schaff 106 Mercedes is ripe for an overtake, having got stuck a little bit behind a GT4. And as the track temperatures continue to drop despite the sun being out, even with the crosswinds fading and no aerodynamic disturbance, drivers have to wonder how they'll be able to regulate their cars. It's good to see at least that without the wind, they're not dealing with any pitch sensitivity or any other random aero issues, but now they're having to deal with the mechanical grip, and that being more of a management concern.
And as we were looking a little bit further back in the field, we saw that the 107 Ford has gone into the pits, and that's 1 lap earlier than needed. With the stint timer at 44 minutes, Hipov in the 109 Ferrari, second place, has taken the lead because of that pit stop, and will stay out for 1 lap longer, and maybe this overcut will make a change in position. The previous times we've seen these go into the pits with these little margins, they have gone into the pits with 3/10 of a gap, and they've left the pits with 3/10 of a gap. There's no excuse, no GT4 or no pit stop time difference that made these gaps a little bit bigger than they were when they got in. But now there's a difference in stop, and the 107 car is out again in P13, and Nowski has gone back behind the wheel, and now it's time to wait and see where the 109 Ferrari will pit and where he will come out.
Yeah, time is of the essence, but drivers have certainly made up enough time for themselves to have a bit of a cushion. Nowski back behind the wheel means that we can see that streak going as the teammate returns to fulfill on the promises of the stint swap. A couple more drivers heading into the pits properly, so Berens, Simic, both in. We will also see potentially some of the GT4s make that jump, make the leap into the pit lane as required, but as things currently stand, Hipov in the pits, going to be coming out fairly soon. I see the drivers swap again there as well. Zimbal currently in second place, with Rangers taking the unofficial lead of the race. Of course, you do have the pit stop as a bit of a differential, but as things currently stand, he's got provisional lead. He's certainly going to make the most of it.
Hipov now on his way to leave the pit lane, has stopped for the amount of time that he needed to stop Nowski on the straight. You can see Hipov exiting the pits. That's not Hipov, that's Schneckenberger on his way out of the pits, and Nowski staying ahead, and it's very, very close still. So the undercut has worked a tiny bit. The gap has increased by just a few tenths, but the 109 Ferrari will be staying behind the 107 Ford, and that overcut has not gained anything for the team, and now it's all eyes to the front two at the moment. Reinders and Zimbal, the 102 and the 103 respectively, in third and fourth net position, as they still have to stop. Waiting to see when they will come in, both at 44 minutes of the stint timer, so it's either this lap or the next lap that they have to come in, and I'm curious to see who will take the undercut and if they will even go on different laps, because like they've said before, they've gone in the same laps, and maybe Zimbal wants to take that undercut on this lap, but we'll have to wait and see.
I think they're both going to go in, to be honest with you. I think you look at how the leaders have done it, and Schneckenberger along with Nowski, how that's played out, with Nowski now holding a 1.1 second gap. I think both of them are going to jump in. They're both going to try and game each other out of the opportunity for an undercut. And the stint timers, they can have a little bit more flexibility with now, considering we have officially crossed the halfway point on the total time. Niels Muller is heading in, and I don't think he's going to be the only driver in, as a massive amount of the GT4s have done exactly that.
And the pit stops, of course, as we're approaching the we've passed the halfway mark, are going to be ramping up a bit. So these front guys all expecting to go in. So from P1 down to P10, I'm expecting at least half of those to go in now. Some of them actually have to go in, as we do see the 114 McLaren of Schwartzman at 47 minutes. And Reinders and Zimbal staying out for one more lap. So they're pushing this stint timer to its absolute limit. So they have to go in on the next lap. They're staying out and basically trying to make sure that their final stint is as short as possible. Like I said during the previous pit stop window, if you stay out later during these first 3 stints, you can have a shorter final stint. It's going to be about 35 minutes compared to the other drivers like Nowski in the 107 and the 109 car, that they have to take those tires 45 minutes before the end of the race, whereas Zimbal and Reinders in the 103 and 102 can take it about 30 to 35 minutes before the end of the race, which means that they have much cleaner tires towards the end on the same fuel, which means that they will have the advantage and maybe even creep up on that win, because the margins out in front are within a few seconds. P1 down to P4, I believe, was only 4 or 5 seconds So this is going to be very close towards the edge, and it's going to be crazy watching the second half unfold.
Yeah, well, the second half is about to get fully underway as we have a massive deluge of GT3s heading their way into the pits now, and many of them quickly trying to jump their opponents as the field is going to be converging very soon. Reindeers Zimbal coming up to the end of the lap, and we will see them challenge each other to the bitter end, really closing in on each other's track space, but both of them heading into the pit lane as quickly as they can. You can see really they wait until the last possible moment before heading on those brakes and getting under the pit speed limit.
And we are looking at currently P5 and P6. It is the gap behind Nowski has increased to 1.5 seconds. So the 107 Ford has a little bit of a bigger gap now. They've stayed out for 1 lap shorter compared to the car behind, which means that they'll have to come in at least 1 lap earlier than the car behind, which means that they'll be able to undercut a little bit more. But that does mean that in the end, they'll have the worst tires of the entire pack out in front. And it's just checking to see where the 102 and the 103 are going to be exiting compared to each other. The 103 now released from their box. The 102 still stationary. Now we can see him going on to the straight. Where does this all end? The 102 car released now, and it does look like the Porsche is just a tiny bit behind, and that's more of a kerfuffle as there's multiple drivers in the midst there, as that does look like there is a GT4 in the pits as well. Nowski stays ahead, and the 109 car following right behind that, and in the top 4 still as they were before they came in. But the difference in stint timer is 6 minutes between the 107 and the 102 and 103 pair.
Yeah, and that 6 minutes is going to be something that really factors in later. I'm looking forward to seeing how the final stint plays out, and particularly when they choose to go into the pits, because they won't have the luxury of choice in the same way the likes of Rangers and Zimbal did. You have Clive Bixby heading into the pits, Chris Radke rounding out our GT3 roster, but things are yet to be fully sated, as I think we do still have a couple of GT4s. There you go, that's Zoltan Bondor in the pits now. I do believe that is everyone having satisfied all the timings.
And that throws us officially into the second half, well, in terms of pit stops at least, as we have 2 stints remaining for everyone, hopefully, if there's no more crashes across the board. Still the fight between P3 and P4, currently getting past one of the GT4s, as the gap out in front has increased to over 2 seconds. Nowski really feeling that gas pedal, likes these temperatures, likes the pressure on the tires, likes the weather, and is very happy to stay out in front. Not the fastest lap, it's only a few tenths of that though, but it's currently running on the previous lap a second quicker than the 109 car, and absolutely killing it out in front.
Well, Nowski's looking like a speeding bullet out there. There's no way to sugarcoat it. In the time that we've had him out for just a couple of laps, he's already broken over a second's worth of gap to Schenkenberger. So this is Nowski in his element. As you said, he's feeling the car. The track is perking up. Even if those surface temperatures aren't quite as hot as they were at the start of the event, they are still well within that operating window for Nowski to extract 110% out of the car. He was their qualifier. It was their best bet in terms of 1 lap pace from the team here. And it's looking like this is going to be a winning combo that sees the 107 Mustang push forward. Schenkenberger is putting some really good racing work down at the same time, but it's just not in that same ballpark right now.
And I'm looking not only at the GT3s, but also the GT4s that are in their element. Busak with a 38-second lead over Daniel Kiefer in second place in the GT4s.
And
Busak is
we just saw it. Sorry, cut you off. That's Reinders. That Zimbal making contact in a big way, tapping the rear, trying to get around a GT4. That was absolutely nail-biting right up until that point. Let's take a quick look and see exactly what happened with these two here. So on board with Zimbal, Let's see, coming up from behind, that is going to be the Aston. He peeks to the right, to the left side, trying to get an outer line, tucks in on the edge, but just expect Rangers to be a little bit closer to the narrow side. And that is all she wrote. So Zimbal is going to be in P3, although not with the cleanest hands, as Rangers is currently 6.7 seconds away and is not feeling like a happy bunny.
I do think that there was something of a GT4 that was out in front that might have caused a little bit of uncertainty in between these two drivers. So Zimbal and Reinders, of course, very fast drivers, as we've seen from the past 1.5 hours from their teams, and especially these two drivers, and just getting shaken up a little bit by a GT4 that's in the middle. And I do believe that Zimbal might have thought that he had a little bit more space, or that Reinders thought that he would get the space from the Porsche, but luckily the Ferrari did not hit the pit wall, or the barrier that separates the pit lane and the pit entry from the track. Very happy to get out of there with the least amount of damage, so you can continue on and just have a little bit of a scar that in the result of that incident in the form of a time loss. Currently just 7 seconds, 6.7 seconds behind the 103 Porsche, but looking to close that gap once again and just head down. Currently has no car ahead to look at, to peek at, or to get impeded by, so we'll have a clean air to try and close that gap once more.
Well, he's got work cut out for him, but I don't see any wavering in that determination, and we'll hopefully see him make up some good time as the session progresses through its second half. We've got a few more cars heading into the pits. There's Thomas Morant heading into the pits, the number 104, although a little bit off cadence to the rest of the field. I wonder if there's an alternate reason behind that. With Jan Buscher in the GT3s, and that's going to be in the Ferrari, chasing down the 720S of Kevin Florenti, the number 121. They're dealing with a little bit of GT4 traffic, but that's not going to deter them from fighting the way through.
Yeah, like we said before with the previous pit stop, the 104 car just in the first row of pit stops in the first few laps of the race, probably part of one of the incidents earlier on in the race. You can probably check that back at some point after the race, and they've had to stop a little bit earlier, which means they are now 10 minutes off the pace of the sync of the rest of the grid. So they stop now, which means that their final stint is going to be just that tiny bit shorter, which should hopefully work in their favor. But they're exiting now in P23 with about a 10-second gap to the car ahead in 22nd place.
Yeah, well, the pressure is certainly on, and this is up and down the field. We kept an eye on Jan Buscher for a little bit here, but even down in the GT4 realm, with many of them spaced out, we do see the bottom of the field continue to be a hot spot. This is Winkler, was driver we saw making a bit of moves earlier on before being dealt a hand of fate, what can only be described as. And they are a driver that's having to deal with a bit of GT3 traffic, but is still trying to play forward and catch up. It's a tough, difficult job. Gotta say, the position he's in right now, he's certainly got his work cut out for him.
Yeah, I mean, we still have an hour and 16 minutes remaining, so race is still far from over. If you make a mistake now, if you get a little bit scratchy on the car, there's still time enough to repair it. There's one pit stop remaining at least for everyone out on track. And we're looking at a little bit of a fight here, though, like we saw before for P16. That's Florenti trying to hold off two Ferraris, the 118 and the 108 car, all very, very close. And now we're getting up to the hill, and I think this is one to watch.
Yeah, let's see how these racers do, as things are getting feisty. Butcher, Florenti coming up side by side. Turn 3 now. The Ferrari is going to have the inside line here, as the McLaren is caught a little bit off guard, I'd say. Wasn't expecting to fire it up the inside as aggressively as one did. Either way, making their way up to the next sector of the course, still holding the advantage. Jan Buscher, a little bit of a tap either side. Well, that's Linus as well in the Ferrari, the 108 this time. It's going to make it a three-way battle. McLaren being fully displaced here. And as you can see, taking the wider line, just sort of reeling from the overtake a bit there. And now the two Ferraris going at it quite aggressively.
And this is what we were talking about before as well. When do you attack? When do you defend? And it looked like the McLaren was attacking a little bit on the Ferrari up ahead and then lost another position, as we do see the 108 Ferrari taking another place. They were double teaming that McLaren, and Lucas now getting 2 places in 1 lap. Amazing work by the 108 Ferrari. And these are the absolute greatest moves and the greatest moments that we can see during these races. Very, very glad to see this all work out.
Yeah, we'll say the fight's far from over yet. Florenti's not going to be letting that one go, even if Linus in the 108 Ferrari is making quick work and a quick gap of Jan Butcher. It's got to be a brief moment, trying to decide how much he wants to go for it, how much he wants to attack. But before long, I do expect some fireworks coming out of these 3, especially as GT4s are going to be pushing them inevitably closer together once again.
Yeah, most of the GT4s are actually behind them, so they've got only the 401 car out in front of them. That's from Busak, who is so far ahead of the rest. Currently a 40-second gap. Last time I checked, it was about 38 seconds, I think. So in about 3 laps, he's gained another 2 seconds. And just on pace difference, he's on the last lap already a second ahead of the 2nd place. So every time I've seen GT4s drive, I've just seen one driver be way out in front, and this race doesn't disappoint in any way whatsoever. Lucas and 108 car currently a little bit too far ahead for the 118 to do anything, so the yellow Ferrari pulling away really, really quickly, and Florenti in the McLaren not able to stay behind the 118 Ferrari either, just opening the gap as well. A little bit of grass touch on that exit by Boucher, and now just pulling away. The gaps are increasing.
Yeah, and I think the McLaren's starting to lose a little bit of momentum there, which is crucial, not just from a position perspective, but also just mentally. If you feel yourself being passed all the time, you can't help but fixate on your mistakes, and it takes a certain mental fortitude to compete at this level, that you have to be able to put your mistakes behind you. You have to be able to really put it away, and sometimes it can be quite difficult to do that, even for the absolute best in the business. But if you fixate on those mistakes, that's when you lose more time trying to compensate, overdrive the car. If not now, then later you will come to regret a rash decision. So keep a cool head, push on through, and I think that's what this split and this level of drivers, this caliber, very good at doing, to be fair.
And looking out in front, I do think that some of those drivers in the top 5 have been looking at their mistakes a little bit more often than anything else. Zimbal with a 28.1, Nowski with a 28.0, Schnekenberger, apologies, with the 128.4. Those are lap times that we'd usually see towards the end of the stint. They're currently in their, well, they've just passed a third of their stint, and they're already dropping the lap times down to numbers that they don't want to see. And especially with Nowski being the first driver and the fastest driver of the top 4, this is absolutely wild. Although the 105 Ford just put in their personal best lap of the race, so they should be chasing it down. And maybe instead of a top 4 battle for the win, we have a top 5 battle for the win. But for that, Reinders first needs to catch up to Zimbal once again to make up for lost time in that spin and that final sector a few laps ago.
And this is a crucial turning point, I think, for a lot of the drivers. It's understanding that the majority of the distance is being covered. We're coming up to that last hour and fairly soon, and with that we might see a change in mindset from some of these racers. It's not going to be so much about the longevity anymore, because they've already got that under their belt. They've managed to push all the way through up until this stage, and now it's just going to be about who can muster that best pace to hold on to those positions, even if it means taking a little bit more risk. I mean, look at the track. There's so much rubber having been laid down by this point that they can afford to be a bit more aggressive and really push the boat out, push those cars to the limits as the time will begin to dwindle and the pressure will start to ease, but it will pick up in a different way.
And if we're looking at the top 3, we do see that Nowski, like I said, was pulling away, but Schnekenberger made a mistake on the previous lap at 29.3. That's far out for where he wants to be. They're currently getting past a lapped GT3 car and that appears to be the let's see, that appears to be the number 119 car in P22, currently getting passed by Zimbal in third place, is within a second of the Ferrari ahead for position, and this is for second place. And Schneekenberger currently still holding that fastest lap, a 27.6, but on the previous lap, losing out on half a second to the Porsche behind.
So, well, there is Zimbal now coming up to the back and closing in a little bit, albeit quite skittish on the exit of the corner there. It's looking like a bit of a wobble could be in the way. And Zimbal certainly has the pace. We've seen them with that pace. They've extracted it lap and lap again with their fight with Reinders, albeit with a fiery end. They were drivers who would know how to push each other to the limit. I think it was just environmental factors that got in their way. But Zimbal is not a driver to be underestimated by Schneckenberger under any circumstances.
Yeah, the fastest lap of their team, the 103, currently at a 127.835, and the car behind with an 875. So the fastest lap in their teams are very, very close, as the 107 car actually has an 822. So it's all very, very close, within a tenth on the fastest laps of their teams, which means that they definitely do have the pace. And like they've shown before, lap and lap again, their pace was so close just a few laps back, all within the low 28s. Just like they're showing now, it is really, really, really close. And Zimbal just trying to push up ahead and is now very, very close to gaining a place. 6/10 gained on that previous lap, ducking into the slipstream on their way to turn 3.
As they're going so close to the back of the Ferrari right now, as they peek into the left side, trying to get a chance to go on them. And we can see going as wide as they possibly can, boxing in the number 109. Not really giving them a chance to open the taps. You can tuck in behind, got a slightly better exit, the 296 did, but that's not going to change anything, and Zimbal is just as aggressive as he was, this time taking command of the corner through the apex, down the inside, heads down the hill, a little bit of wobble on the curb for the Ferrari, forced to go back, and Zimbal is up into P2.
The inside was just completely open. The Ferrari had the inside line, with the Porsche just pressed up right behind him and thought, you know, if I can keep the outside for the turn 4, for turn 4, I'll have the inside for the next section. But before they could even get there, the Ferrari touched a tiny bit of sand, gave up the inside, but was pushed just a bit too wide, wanted to get on the throttle just a tiny bit too early, lost the speed, and Zimbal on through to second place. 6 seconds to go to P1, and as we see, these cars are getting closer and closer, and they are not letting go. Schneekenberger on his way in the 109 Ferrari to maybe take back this place on this lap.
Oh, in a similar story, we have Sven Freitag and Sascha Wozner in a battle pretty heated against one another right now. This is Mercedes v Porsche, and the 125 hot on the heels. They are really starting to get some close proximity. Look at how close they are drawing to each other's bumpers and how they are drawing to other traffic, trying to leverage the GT4s as a roadblock. As Wozner does make brief contact with one of the McLarens in that lower class and uses them to try and impede on Freitag's attack. Doesn't quite work, but every 10th counts. 0.4 is going to be the distance currently between them in terms of time. See if we can open up the taps, or if there's going to be a challenge heading in the next couple of corners.
And if we look only a few seconds further back, we see a three-way battle for 13th place. The 124, the 113, and the 117 cars all fighting for that place, trying to make their way through the field. They're so close to each other, and the battles are starting to open up again. Same for the GT4s. There's a few battles. The 402 is trying to chase down the 408 car, as well as the 410 car chasing down the 407, as they were all very split away just a few moments ago, but now they've gone all on the offense and they have started to gain some more time, as we do see another overtake and Zimbal dropping back to third place.
Well, so Zimbal is currently feeling a bit of pressure as these two are going back and forth. Let's take a quick rewind to see exactly how they've been getting on. So That is in fact Zimbal having a bit of contact with a GT4. Funnily enough, that is the same GT4 but between him and his fight with Reindeers just earlier. So I guess there's a little bit of a comeback moment. This is Schneckenberger going back on position with him, and then as we clock back over to present time, we'll see them continue to fight it out in just a moment. Let's go quickly back on with them, and now you can see they go side by side all the way through this next sector down to the apex once again. Zimbal, second verse, same as the first. Control the apex, ride it out to the very edge, control that corner, and the position is his once again. The 103 Porsche holds on to P2. Schneckenberger is continuing to put on pressure, but it doesn't look like there's any major factors currently standing in the way of Zimbal this time.
He had the outside line out of turn 3, then held it all the way through turn 4. Very beautifully done. Didn't get pushed too far. And then, of course, at the exit of turn 4, he's got the inside for the next few turns up to turns 5, 6, and then 7, ultimately gaining the place right before that section. So Zimbal, knowing what moves to make, trying to do the same thing that Schneckenberger did on the previous lap and failed at a few laps ago. And Zimbal getting the upper hand and now trying to pull away a little bit, as we do see a drive-through penalty getting handed out to Eric Gazelle in the 113 car. Down in P14 isn't a fight with the 124 car, but we'll have to serve that drive-through penalty. It's going to drop them a little bit further back, as the gaps are quite close down in the middle of the field. Drive-through is about, so let's say 20 seconds of time loss. That would put them all the way from 14th down to 20th. And that's how close the field is at the moment.
Yeah, you can see having to sweep in quite quickly to serve that one. You pretty much have to serve it immediately. So that is Giselle coming out of the fighting and in to the bottom end of the pecking order. Unfortunate, but sometimes this is what happens and it is avoidable. Just gotta be a bit more careful.
And that's where it raises the question. Is this a drive-through due to track limits? Or would this be because of an earlier incident or contact even? Because we know that there's drive-through spaces, right? Of course, there's the exit of turn 9, the exit of turn 10, and the exit of turn 1, and maybe even turn 3, where you can get really close to the track limits and maybe jump over just a tiny bit. But I haven't seen that many drive-through penalties. As I say that, then the 104 car of Tempest has gotten another drive-through penalty as well, but I haven't seen that many drive-through penalties, but I have seen quite some contact between drivers. So I don't know if that was a drive-through for track limits or if it was for contact, but we can sure ask that if they do decide to join that interview. So we'll have to take a quick note for drivers and ask them how the track limits have been treating them on this track.
We'll have to wait and see if we get a chance to talk to them later on. But the final hour is quickly looming, and the pressure has amped up for a certain few drivers. Keep an eye as the things in the middle of the pack, nothing short of chaos. I look at this, 3, 4 wide, GT3s, GT4s, they're everywhere right now. Florenti, Cantor, Axman, all together, all fighting for any chance of position, breathing room. They just need to get themselves out of trouble right now. Florenti in particular has had a bit of a difficult spell this race. I wonder if something's going on there.
Yeah, the pace does not look to be there. 131 on the previous lap, on 2 laps ago actually, and 130.6 on the previous lap. That does not look like the pace that they've had earlier on in the race. Maybe a focus, maybe some traffic like we saw, and just getting overtaken twice in a row. Gazelle is now on 18th place. Gained a few spots there actually in that kerfuffle. 4-way battle now from 18th down to 21st. As Kanta is now taking another place of the 115 Porsche, dropping down to 20th place, still side by side as they're heading on to turn 4. The inside line being held by the Porsche. We'll have a little look, but there's the switch from the Ford, taking that inside line, and almost simultaneously with the Porsche taking the other line. GT4 is now holding on to the inside for the next section of the track and will have the advantage on this as they're trying to lap a GT4 as well. And there is Florenti just only able to watch as this all unfolds as they're lapping these GT4s.
And now we'll see the final hour ticking over officially. Axman Cantor continuing to fight, but up and down the field, people are considering their next move, their next options. And as the hour crosses, the dynamic does change. The dynamic fundamentally changes, because now you're looking at a situation where drivers are going to be considering their last stint soon. And on that last stint, how aggressive are they going to go? Are they really going to eke it into the 30s? Do they have the stint timer that can afford such a strategy? And with that in mind, how much are they going to be fighting as drivers? Because the pit strategy is only one thing, but how much they're going to push to the very end, considering that this is the final leg. That's where they've also got to balance it out with overcuts and undercuts.
And looking out in front, Nowski is actually slowing down a tiny bit, as is Reinders. Gap is only looks to be about 7 seconds now for Reinders up ahead, so has dropped down and dropped the gap down a tiny bit, as we do see Schneekenberger in third place trying to get behind Zimbo, trying to get past, I should say, in that fourth turn. Very wide as well, almost on that sand, slowing him down as the lap times are dropping down for these drivers. Very big send there for the Ferrari, almost hitting the Porsche in the rear, and that was very close to contact. But luckily these drivers know how the brakes work and know exactly when to press them down, and the gap is so small that I would believe, if you told me there was only a hair in between those two cars, I would believe you instantly, would not question it for a second. These drivers pushing each other absolutely to the limits.
And I once heard that drivers were getting so close that you could put a slice of bread between them and it would only be lightly dented. That's how close they were racing. Now, while I questioned the origins and where the piece of bread came into it, what I'm not doubting for a second is how in tune these drivers are with their machines. As you said it so eloquently, they really know exactly how to push the limits, where those limits are, and the breaking point of each other, so they can really put some amazing racing in front of us on our screens right now as the situation and the session progresses. Although we do see a couple of interesting developments a bit further down the order, because I'm getting reports, if we go to a quick instant replay here, unfortunately that is not the correct one, but we go to the actual replay here for a second. This is going to be Sandor Szabo. Remember, a driver we have paid a fair amount of attention to throughout the course of this session. You can see he's under a bit of pressure. That is going to be the McLaren GT3, and there you go. Unfortunate. Taking a bit of a slide, and that is going to be them dropping down quite significantly.
And as we said before, there's the response, the what do you call it? I'm losing my words right now. The responsibility, there we go, I was looking for. It's the responsibility of the GT3 to get that clean overtake done on that GT4. So the GT4 holding their line is actually the best thing you can do, because you're predictable. The GT3 knows where the line is because they're driving it all the time themselves. So once the GT4 stays on the line, it's up to the GT3 to find the opportunity. And if the lapped car, if the GT4 decides to move over, it's usually on a straight. It won't be in front of a corner. It's the GT3's job to get past, and there will definitely be a report be flinging around for that incident, as that was a car sideways.
That was a car sideways, no two ways about it. So there will certainly be some things being flagged, and as the drivers get a bit more aggressive with some of their overtakes and some of their moves per space, this is going to be a theme. I think we're going to see a couple more incidents, although one can always hope that that is not the case. I think it would be almost blind to count it out completely. There won't be a couple more nail-biter moments like that in the future as we head into the final hour.
So that Porsche that was sideways in turn 3 was the 115 of Axman, as there was a small contact with Kanta in the 112 Ford. on the apex of turn 3, and Axman losing out on 2 positions there, trying to get one, and losing out on a lot of time, about 6 or 7 seconds or so, currently behind the Ford that they were fighting with before. So that was an unfortunate incident, but a little bit of contact that we're going to look at now.
Here's a brief replay, just quickly revisiting, seeing exactly what's going on between them. See, coming up to the back, turn 3, into the inside on the nose, and there you go. That's just door being closed. Luckily, quick work with the accelerator, actually getting themselves out of trouble. That could have gotten very nasty, so points for style as well as damage control there. Either way, though, not going to be happy with those positions being dropped. Axman's got work to do now. He wants to make it good on that.
Now we're looking at the top 3 currently. Schneckenberger again real close to Zimbel. Actually, the Porsche having to go defensive every now and then, which allows Nowski in the 107.4 to just pull away. The gap is now about 7.5 seconds between P1 and P2, and the 109 Ferrari on their way to get this position back once again. The Porsche has dropped back a little bit from the start and has been gaining these places back up, is currently claiming ownership of 2nd place, is where they started as well at the start of this race, but currently under a lot of pressure from the Ferrari. Remember those warning shots that we've heard fire a few laps ago, actually I would say a few stints ago, because these 2 cars have been added for, I wanted to say hours, but it is hours at this point. It has been 2 hours, and these 2 cars have been added the entire time. No rest for the Wicked, and Wicked the racing is.
Yeah, to say you were avoiding saying hours, but it is the truth. It has been over 2 hours now, and even more if you account for qualifying and practice sessions beyond that. And Schneckenberger is hot on the heels of Zimbel right now, with Nowski about 8 seconds clear. He's got a bit of a clean space that he's certainly leveraging to full advantage, but Schneckenberger is hot to the Porsche's rear, the 103. Not going to be letting anyone challenge or take that away from him right now. But we also see battles up and down the grid. This one's going to be with the GT4s. Winkler, Jungen, both coming together. Let's see how they handle turn 3 here. On to the inside. There's the Mercedes. Holding his nerve, holding his tongue, and keeping things nice and smooth. Very impressive, but under pressure of his own now, as this is going to be Ben Rios also looking for a piece of the pie. GT3 trying to displace them all, but you can see completely boxed in there.
And that's what happens with cars lapping and getting lapped, especially these close fights. Winkler actually getting the place back. Still side by side. It's very, very close around the outside for the 407, and not gaining that place as Johan still has the inside line. It's going to be pushed towards the sand, not touching it, touching a little bit of the other car, a little bit of contact. And now Winkler dropping back as Reese is on their way. The 410 car now in the fight as well, taking the outside line, a little bit more speed through it as well. And Winkler, deep drop back, still has the inside line, will take that space back, and it's back and forth a little bit between these drivers. So Johan is just trying to pull away with it, as Reese and Winkler are now fighting it out on their own in the 420 BMW, just rolling away with it and staying out in front.
Jungen in the 420 is looking to be the car to beat for this small battle, but don't discount the others, as there will still be plenty of opportunity, I feel, them to really make some headway. Got some high hopes as things progress here, as things continue. Eyeing our way back up to the GT3s. JSL we're back on board with, having taken his stop and go penalty a little bit earlier, is now on the attack once again, and this time on Jambucha.
The gaps are closing in a little bit more as we look at the GT3. You see Florenti as well within half a second of Kanta. We see Gazelle here, half second of Bucher, and then Hanteke in 13th, right behind Freitag. Paul as well, right behind Drexler. And of course, our second and third place going at it again, currently fighting through a big pack of traffic, or have fought through a big pack of traffic. And they're actually driving right behind the fight that we're watching right now. Coming up the hill, we see P2 and P3 as Gazelle has just made the turn. So they might be on their way to lap these guys as well. So that's how far the GT3 grid has been split within a second on qualifying, or within 8/10, I believe it was all the way up to P17 and P16 from pole position, and now it has gone to one full lap, or 1 minute and 28 seconds is the gap between P1 and P17.
If that is really a big indicator of, even within this level of competition, you can have a major divergence in terms of pace. And considering how long this event is, really that is not too massive of a difference. It's just those small adding ups of half second here, second there, and it's all just stacked up over time. Remember, we are 86 laps in and counting, so the drivers certainly are really pushing the limits here, but they do add up to some significant time gains by the end of the event. It's why when it goes back to being on the back foot, and even if you lose out 6, 7, 8 seconds in an incident or a collision or whatever else may be, you're never truly out of it. You can peel it back. It just takes a bit of patience.
And if we look at the total laps of this race, let's say this race would end on about 100 laps, right? And Zimbal ends 10 seconds behind Nowski. That means their average pace is only 1/10 slower than what the 107 Ford has been doing this race. So that big of a difference in time can, towards the end of a race, can be really just be boiled down to a very small difference in pace on a single lap on average. And that's why we always say consistency is so much more important rather than single lap pace. Single lap pace is meant for qualifying. Consistency is made for racing, and that's why we see Nowski up ahead now, consistently banging out faster lap times than the competition, and that's what earned the 107 Ford the lead, and that's what made them hold it for so long as they have.
And this is where push comes to shove. Schneckenberger is really drawing in close now to Zimbal, within a couple of tenths, even dealing with a couple of GT4s in the way. It's not going to stop him. It really got work cut out, but now it's time to see if he can turn that fighting move and those close proximity pressure into real action. Chasing hard. But this is all eyes currently on Schneckenberger, as he's got a Porsche, the 103. He's had him in his sights for about 10 or so, if not more laps now. But I think before the stints come to cross over, he needs to get this done. The wind has picked back up, but the track has got even colder. 25 degrees surface now, and ambient has dropped as well. So cooling management, thermal management, once again a concern alongside the crosswinds.
I think Schneckenberger is going to be running out of time if he keeps on driving like this. Only 8 minutes left on that stint timer. It's going to be amount to 5 more laps, whereas Zimbal can take 7 more laps. That's the difference between those two that we've seen all around, with Zimbal and Reinders having the same sync, the same pit lap as they've had, and Schneckenberger just a little bit earlier. So he's going to be running out of time if he can't get past. Currently getting these GT4s in the middle is also going to be a problem. GT4s are a little bit wide as well, taking those track limits to heart, breaking a bit to compromise for that. But the Ferrari's just going to run out of time like this. But that also opens up the opportunity to maybe undercut, as there's 46 minutes remaining, which means that if you go into the pit now, you will make it towards the end. Even with the extra lap, you will make it towards the end. So anyone that pits now or leaves the pit now will make it towards the end on just one more stint. And Schneckenberger can definitely be looking for an undercut here if he wants to take Zimbal. But then again, Zimbal might just have the better tires towards the end. So it's all just a question of what happens, and that appears to be a sideways Porsche. That is Zimbal, and he's being led past again. So that is sportsmanship and a half. Schneckenberger does not want the place on a spin. He wants it on racing, not even looking on the inside, and it's going to be waiting for the next opportunity, and that is what we call racing.
Yeah, as I say, great sportsmanship being put on full display there. And you almost see like the communication between the drivers in real time. It's seeing that he did have a spin. Not sure whether that was contact with the GT4 or otherwise. Either way, he spun. He doesn't want to get it out on track. So it's as if they've made a handshake. They've said to each other, we are fighting for position, yes, but there's 45 minutes left in the race. I want to get this position on you on merit. I want to get it on track. I don't want it to be through a spin out of each other's power. We'll show that courteousness to each other.
I have checked the replay real quick, and it looked like a small misjudgment of the Ferrari on their braking point up the hill. A very small tap, so there was contact being made, but I do think that Zimbo has taken this as an apology and has accepted it as he's gone past. I saw some lights being flashed by the Ferrari as well as a way of apologizing for the contact, and they will try again, and surely this time it will go right. Nowski now in the pits, the 107 Ford, for their final stop. 44.5 minutes remaining, and that will go all the way towards the end, as will everyone else that stops now. So we're going to be looking at maybe, hopefully, a little bit of a slow stop for Nowski. I don't wish them bad luck, of course not. I wish them the fastest pit stop that they can get. But of course, do I want to see a fight for the win? I'm not getting my rain, so I want my fight for some more podium positions.
Yeah, as things have perked up in terms of the weather. It's left a certain WAPS Racing a little bit disappointed, but we'll have our enjoyment in other ways, as Schneckenberger is continuing to put pressure on from now provisional leader Finn Zimbo. And the 103 Porsche still holding firm, and again, going back to that communication, they had that minor contact, misjudgment, apologise, you move on, you're good sports about it, and it's almost like you're self-stewarding in a way. And typically we say leave it to the stewards and don't try and take things into your own hands, but I think that's one of the few times where you can see sometimes it can just prevent further issues by playing the sportsman, playing the not higher ground, that's not the right way to say it, but certainly being the respectful driver that is befitting of such an environment, and you will get shown that respect back.
And usually I would also agree with give it to the stewards. They know what to look for. They'll know what to do with it. And I would say that if you're so close to getting another position, but it currently looks like the car ahead, Nowski in the 107 Ford, which is giving it to his teammate, was so far ahead, about 8 or 9 seconds almost, that realistically, on the current pace, they knew he was just going to take it home. There's no way we're going to catch that. We just won this battle between us and not lose too much more. Because, let's be honest, if the 109 Ferrari were to be reported for this incident, they would get a penalty that's much bigger than the time they lost trying to give that position back. And they would have dropped even more positions and maybe even lose a place to Reinders and be kicked off the podium. And that's something you don't want when you're playing in these close proximity, as there's actually a small bump draft there for Zimbo, who's getting pushed by the Ferrari as Schneckenberger goes into the pits. And that is the box for our Ferrari. And we're looking at where he's going to exit in relation to the 107 Ford.
And that is going to be his final stop, of course, with any stints being closed after this point, taking all the way to the end, having exceeded the final 48 minutes. Schneckenberger in and is going to be joining the 107 Mustang, now having swapped back to second driver of David Nashvili. I'm going to completely butcher that a few more times, I feel like, this session. But a few more cars still need to pit. We're seeing a few more GT3s, a couple of GT4s who have also taken their mandatory stop. Time is of the essence here. The drivers need to decide how they want to handle this final stint and where they want to end up.
I'm going to throw you a little curveball here, Ben, but I do believe the 109 Ferrari has just gained a drive-through penalty, which means that after this stop, they'll have to make one more trip through the pit lane. That's going to lose them a position and maybe even two. And that means that we have a whole new podium contender, and the 109 Ferrari will have to drop behind a little bit further.
Unfortunate, as that is pretty much the worst thing that you could see at this stage of the race. You put your foot down, you put down the best performance that you can, and all of a sudden you're slapped with a drive-through and you're gonna have to take it all back to the drawing board. At best, they'll still recover some decent positions and subsequent ranking / points, but at worst, this is a complete death nail for your race efforts and would have some long-lasting impacts into the rest of the series.
Yeah, losing so many points, of course, is not going to be great for your team. It's not going to be good for results. And Hippauf now back behind the wheel again, will go through that pit lane to maybe see and lose as little time as possible. We'll be serving it instantly, of course. Zimbal still out halfway through the track now. I'm going to check real quick if there's anyone close to the lead that still needs to pit on this lap. It appears that everyone still has a lap or two to go before they have to box, and they will be staying out for just a little longer. Zimbal is currently through that second sector, leading. It's just about 4 seconds ahead of the 102 Ferrari of Reinders, who has actually made up quite a bit of time. If we look at the little spin that happened a bit earlier on, they've gained quite a bit of space now. The 107 Ford is looking to jump the standings once the rest goes into the box. We'll have to wait a few more laps as Zimbal stays out, Reinders stays out, and everyone else appears to be staying out as well.
Yeah, it looks like they have leveraged the stint timers of overlap to their advantage. They've got 48 minutes per stint, and that has meant that they can take up to 9 minutes extra towards the latter end of the race. So this will of course be the point where most drivers are now heading into the pits between the next couple of laps, but as things are at this point, particularly with the GT3s, most of them, or at least from my perspective, have stayed out and are really looking to get those prime tyres all the way to the end.
And this is where we can see the difference in tire towards the later stage, because we see that the 107 Ford has stopped, and we see the 111 and the 116 cars now coming in as well. But the 107 Ford has stopped a tiny bit earlier, about 3 laps it'll be once Zimbal goes into the box. And that is going to be the difference in tire condition towards the end. Everyone will be on the same amount of fuel towards the end of the race, because they'll be filling it exactly till the end. As before, they've actually had different amounts of fuel. If you have newer tires, you'll also have more fuel. So that means that you have more pace due to cleaner tires, but less pace due to more fuel. That's all going to be gone now. Everyone who's pitted later will have newer tires and the exact same fuel, so they'll have the advantage. Hippauf in the 109 up to P8 again, still managing the damage that they've taken. But the problem will happen once the 107 car is going to be dropping in pace and Zimbal and Reinders will be on their tail.
Yeah, to say that offset with the fuel loads effectively being nullified does mean it is a game of management and a game of a pace right till the very end. In particular, managing those tyres to keep them in their prime window. Now, this could very easily be taken by some as a free pass to just drive as hard as they can, but that will only serve to harm you, particularly as you get to those last 10 minutes and you really see the windows closing in. No, this is about managing and getting the best out of those tyres for the time period that you have allotted. Overdriving the car is still just as dangerous as it was at minute 1. The only difference here is that you have a safety net in form of the checkered flag.
Yeah, and of course you have that safety net, but now you have basically also in some way less of a safety net. As before, when you get damage, you can just go to the pits and drive the rest of the race without the damage. If you get the damage now, you can't really pit again. Your position will be lost. You'll be dropping so far back and with no time left to make up for it. Collision on lap 1? Sure, there's 3 hours left, guys. Come on, calm down, we'll get it back. Collision on lap 100? Well, it's not going to be that easy.
Going to be a much harder ordeal if you had that kind of issue. Late stage, but most of the field is now heading in, and this is that crucial turning point we were so desperately referencing earlier. 35 minutes on the clock. Most of GT3 and 4 are now in the pit lane. So Zimbal, Reinders, Caracas in, and this is going to be the 107 Mustangs' time to reassert themselves into the lead.
And we do see the Porsche now getting released and driving through the pit lane, but it's so slow. They have such an early box, and the 107 Ford just speeding right past it, reclaiming the lead. And Zimbal has just left the pit lane, and it's currently about 6.5, 7 seconds behind the leader. And the 107 Ford will take that once again. Reinders actually taking a little bit of space from the looks of it, and will be going back into the fight. But here we see the 105 Ford getting into that fight. The car that was once in 5th place as is now fighting their way to maybe get that podium position. Started in 11th place, mind you. The top 3 is currently back to where they started, but P4 came all the way running from P11 and 2 seconds behind the podium. They're going to be looking ahead, and they're going to be seeing that podium ever so closer, and they're a team. There's 2 drivers that are looking at each other, and they're saying, we have a chance. There is a moment, and we can see the podium right in front of us. Let's get it. 35 minutes, absolute sending.
Yep, and that is going to be a bit of a balancing act when you say sending, but this is the chance where they can go as hard as they have ever gone before, short of qualifying, and they know that they won't have as much of a longer lasting impact should they be in a poor position or making a mistake. Like you said though, it is higher risk and higher reward, so we will have to see how these drivers manage that subsequent risk. But one thing is for sure, as we head our way into potentially last couple of laps before lap 100 now. Most drivers have spaced themselves, but there are still few battles that have been raging from as early as lap 60, continuing on their charge.
Now we have to remember that the 104 car, the Ford, it's currently in 14th place, that's a lot of force, is off sync with the rest and has to pit within the next 20 minutes, which means that they'll have to make a splash and dash towards the end, which is going to take less than a full pit stop, but they will have to go in once more. So they're currently in 14th. It looks to be a good position. They're going to be dropping back at least a few to counteract what that is, because they have the 108 right behind them within a few tenths. That's a really close battle. And then about 6 seconds, 5-6 seconds, they have another car. A few seconds behind that, I think another 7, is another car. So it's going to be real close to see what happens here. As they actually do take their stop now. So
they have just jumped into the pits now, so
perfect time.
We'll see them re-emerging a bit further down the field, but hopefully some of that time will be saved through only having to do a splash and dash and a quick swap if applicable. But eyes onto GT4, this is Rebel and Sabo quickly going to each other's throats, and the 409 alongside the 404, they've had a bit of sparring back and forth throughout the race. Now it's time to see who's going to be the ultimate victor. Let's see what they can do as they are making their way out of turn 3 through 4 into 5. Nobody's going to be going for some big pounces yet, but Zabo, remember, chip on his shoulder, probably feeling like having had that altercation earlier. Now got a chance to really move forward and make themselves known as a podium holder in GT4.
Yeah, of course, it's a podium holder. It's not going to be for the win, as it looks like Busak, the solo driver, has made an absolute charge this race. P1 held for such a long time. The gap from P1 down to P2 is 49 seconds. That is crazy. 2.5 hours in, 49 seconds. A solo driver taking the lead this far. There's no way anyone can compete. And the podium space is still open, but that's only for 3rd place. We're looking at that right now.
Keeping eyes firmly locked on these GT4s right now. Things are heating up as well as in the GT3 camp, because we do see That is the 108, the 125 coming together, albeit very briefly, challenging each other firmly for position. We do see a bit of GT4 action up ahead as they're contesting, jostling for position. It's going to be a bit of a heated squabble, but Zabo is dropping a bit behind because of the GT3 interference.
Yeah, so this is a GT3 battle trying to lap a GT4 battle, and that's never something you want to see as a GT4. You just want to have a clean battle, and then suddenly you have two GT3s behind that are going to be in the middle of you, but they're also fighting. You have one driver has to take the hit and stay behind and say, okay, I'm just going to lift off here, let these guys pass, and hopefully I can rejoin once the driver that I'm battling with is also going to lift off and let them through. But if that doesn't happen, you're out of a position. So do you want to take that risk, or do you want to stay fighting? But then you risk impeding the cars behind. It's all such a mental mess for these GT4s and the GT3s as well, of course, because they have the opposite. Do I give space, or do I wait for these GT4s to let me go by, or do I absolutely send it? And one of the two risks losing the position, and the other one risks impeding. So it's all just a case of, where do I see the best opportunity? And like we said before, risk versus reward. What's the best case scenario, and how can we achieve that?
It's all about, if not getting the position and the time that you want, it's about damage limitation. It's about looking at your immediate environment, deciding the best course of action, and then hoping that things go your way, as well as doing everything in your power. Make sure it does. Case in point, GT3 coming up on the inside. Little bit of a rear bump. That's the 117 Mustang, currently being piloted by Niels Muller. And he's currently in P14 for GT3, trying to make up some time. Either way, looking like a bit of a dicey one. Although, looking at that, we'll just see. We'll jump over to the 121 McLaren. They were sideways and going sort of wrong way round, doing a little bit of a pirouette, all making their way onto the track. Let's see exactly what happened here with the number 121. So you can see on the chase, was trying to keep up with a couple of the others, and it's getting too wobbly over the curbs, impacting the wall there, and then it's just about limping themselves back onto track. So sad to see. Unfortunately, sometimes it's just an unforced error. That is where you land.
And it looked to be a perfect example of overcorrecting. Felt a little bit of oversteer, wanted to correct it by steering towards the left, towards the outside of the track. Then turns out that the car suddenly got a lot of grip, started turning left, and spun out of control onto the grass and into the wall. Very unfortunate to happen on such a fast part of the track, but overcorrection is often a very difficult thing to prevent, because once you feel the oversteer, you want to correct it. But you never know how much, and it's so difficult to get the perfect amount, because too little and you'll spin out clockwise. Too much, you'll spin out counterclockwise. I don't think I've ever seen anyone do that properly in any of these races, especially these endurance races where there's so much tiredness, so much effort being put in the race that towards the end you're just done. You just want to see the checkered flag, and stuff like that just happens.
I think the drivers naturally lean towards overcorrecting anyway, particularly in that scenario, because if he had rotated onto the track, that could have got much nastier. Much better he went into the grass and took a chance with overcorrecting it, because under would have much more dire consequences. Either way, well controlled, got himself back on track, and in the end, it's very difficult to get those kind of maneuvers done in a pressure of a race situation. Surely, if you had your 100% focus on it, then you might be able to catch it. But when you get swept off guard like that, it's very easy to lose the tail. And if you're not fishtailing, then you're rotating out in some undesired direction.
No, especially on a place like the exit of turn 9, there's obviously going to be some curbs and some little hops to be made, as we just see Reinders going through this pack, trying to lap these GT3s down in P17 and 18, as he's trying to defend his 3rd place from the 105 Ford. And that team of Visceral Esports is currently making haste, half a second gain already on the previous lap, trying to get that last podium position, looking forward and only seeing one car and one car only that they need to beat. They know if they pass this Ferrari, that podium is theirs and so many points to their name. But they'll have to gain another 3 seconds in the next 25 minutes to be able to get past.
And therein lies the challenge. It's not going to be easy, and it's going to be an uphill battle, to put it charitably. But it is within their power. 25 minutes on the clock, all stops being made. This is a breakneck race to the finish. No additional mechanics, no additional considerations. Make it from A to B. That's all that matters now. We're seeing some drivers embrace that wholeheartedly. Here's Liebner making a move on Ben Schmidt.
And it's also trying to see if you can take the track limits to its limit. And like you said, take to the finish. I think some of these drivers will be playing it a bit safer. I do see the lap times going to the mid-28s, 29s, and even 30s if we look at P8 and even further down the grid as well, like P17, P18, the cars that we were on board with before as well. They've been trailing towards the 1 minute 30s, whereas everyone was doing 27s and 28s earlier on in the race. They might be taking it a little bit easier on the exits of some corners to maybe try and see if they can take it a little bit more calmly and not risk getting the drive-through penalty that the 109 car had, as they're currently only a few seconds behind the 101 car. If a 3-second gap in 25 minutes is possible, then a 3.5-second gap definitely is. So they're not out of the top 5 finish just yet.
Yeah, it's still plenty of work to do, but the field is converging in a few different places now, as starting to get a bit more comfortable with pushing the boat out, at least for some drivers. Colin Janke, 113 Aston Martin, only chasing hot on the heels of the Mercedes of Timo Schaff. Now, these two have been pretty close for the last couple of laps, and there's another fight a little bit further away from them, 10 seconds adrift, in fact, is also brewing. This is between the Mustang of Eric Beckman and Jan Butcher's 118 Ferrari. So plenty of jostling, plenty of fighting, and even further up, this is a side-by-side, Vignoli and Bixby, 108 and 124. Ferrari v Aston, going quickly, darting to the inside, going as defensive as one can to hold the line, hold firm, and refuse to yield, as things are quickly taking an aggressive turn. Bixby not taking that overtake lightly either. Great run out the outside into turn 4, managing to get just so much more speed on the exit.
And while we were watching this, there was a big moment a little bit further back where we saw, I think that's the 118 car, the Ferrari of Bucher, just getting a little bit of contact with the 123 car, I believe that was, from Beckman. A little bit of contact there. There you have it. Ferrari sideways, backwards on the track, having to recover, losing quite a bit of time, scaring one other car trying to pass on through. As looking a little bit further ahead, there's a battle going on currently for P11. Vignoli getting past Bixby, and that's the 108 Ferrari getting past the 124 Aston Martin right towards the end, and the QRT Esports car dropping back 1 place. Madcap Racing taking 11th spot.
Yep, and nicely, cleanly done too. We're going to see much more of that jousting come to fruition here. Back down in 15-16, it's Jankovic Schaff once again, much closer than most battles on the course, and in fact Jankovic is getting very close to the back of that Mercedes now. Was about half a second, now dropped down to just a couple of tenths. So I wonder, is there going to be a decisive move being levied in the next couple of corners, or are we going to see that Aston bide their time?
Well, important decisive moves have been made already in the GT4s, as Leibner has taken the place of Schmidt just a few corners back, as they're trying to not lose too much time getting lapped by a GT3 to be going up on their inside. That is Vignoli in P11 trying to get past. So this battle for position once again is being overtaken by a battle for positions. Leibner keeps the space going through all this. Schmidt loses out on 1 spot. There's still some more battles further on the GT4 grid, as we see Reese in 37th, trying to get close to Stratman in 38th. So the 410 Aston Martin, putting out the pressure right out of the gates of turn 3, all the way to turn 4, trying to catch that slipstream, trying to see if the inside is open, but it doesn't look like Stratman giving too much of the speed to the car behind. And there's of course a GT3 once again trying to lap these guys, and that is a little bit of a kerfuffle, and Stratman losing the position. Reese going on through.
Yeah, they're not looking good for him there. Just looked a little bit too aggressive for a second. And that is, unfortunately, where we saw Stratman taking a drop. So that is Ben, Reis and Alexander Stratman, 410 and 407 respectively. But making it quickly alongside, that is, I believe, that's the number 115. You can see taking a bit too hot there. And the GT3 does get through, but at the cost of Stratman's position.
And looking at further ahead in the GT3 range, we see some more fights here for P15. That's actually for P14. It's a three-way battle. Schaff now a second behind Muller. Actually within the second as they're approaching towards turn 4. Small look in the inside for Janke. And unfortunately not able to make it, but that's the sand touched, and that's Janke going on through. Schaff can do nothing but sit behind, and that is a place gained as they are navigating the back markers. That was Heim in the 406 Ginetta. So the Ginetta that you love so much that we were talking about before has just made an appearance in a battle. It's just made a decisive action, put Schaff down the place.
Oh, it all comes back to Ginetta in the end, apparently. So we're gonna see maybe a couple more cameos from that car, and we will, of course, check back in with more of the GT4 action, but things currently stand to change in a big way. We do have some interesting developments, namely in the front end of the field, as the 107 car is having a bit of an issue. So technically, looks like they are seriously struggling right now. Not really sure what's going on with that car. So the freak out on the back end with the telemetry was going absolutely insane.
And it appears they've had a little bit of a hit on the front as well. Not contact with anyone else. It looked like they were teleporting around a bit and then suddenly got massive front damage. As you can see, the hood popped open a tiny bit, and Zimbal taking the free lead. Just gained first place out of nowhere with the 107 Ford having that issue. Is such a shame to be running in first place your entire race, and then all of a sudden, due to a technical issue, dropping back about 7 or 8 seconds is what they had of a lead. So it's about 8 or 9 seconds that they've dropped back with quite a bit of damage out in front. And that begs the question, can Reinders catch up and have the 102 car be second place? And then even further, how far will the 107 car drop, and will they drop off the podium?
That's the thing, I don't know what's going to happen here, because the 107 Mustang had such a sharp technical glitch. You see them literally flying round the course to the point where I don't know if they're going to be able to get by. If not on the fact of pace, then on the fact of confidence. Do they have the confidence that they will be able to push it round and keep that car stable while they do it? That's going to be the big question mark that's hanging over his race effort now.
So they've lost about 7 seconds on that previous lap, and now we can try and see at the end of this lap how much time they've actually lost in terms of pace. But looking at it, Zimbal's already 3 seconds ahead, and Reinders only 4 seconds behind. Every single corner will be a time loss for the 107 Ford, and every single corner will be more hope for the 102 and the 105 cars, who are actually, the 105 car only 5 seconds behind the 107. So they're actually looking really hot for that podium place, as the 107 Ford unfortunately is losing out on some pace, going very wide in some of these corners. So they appear to be struggling a lot.
It's a difficult challenge to face, but final 15 minutes quickly closing in. So we're getting to those final stages for all the drivers here, and for everyone it is going to be quite a task, but it's just about bringing it home now. Whether everyone on this course, for all 44 drivers who have currently taken residence of the track, and for everyone who has swapped in for their teammates. So the 44 cars, the 44 teams, they've got to bring it all together now. Got to bring it all home, and things are going to be heating up.
I'm very surprised though. We've had 45 cars line up, I believe, and 44 are looking to finish. And that's a ratio that I haven't seen in quite a while in these endurance races, that such a big grid makes it towards the end. So massive kudos to everyone competing and everyone finishing the race, and especially the 107 car with such bad luck towards the end. They've just lost about 2 seconds on the previous lap. And there's about, was that 2, 4, 6, 8 laps remaining, 9 laps even, for the 107 car. So to that times 10, it's about 20 seconds time loss. They might drop down to 5th or 6th.
Yeah, I think by this point, it's safe to say the 107 Mustangs race efforts are thoroughly dashed through no fault of their own, but still, it's a consideration that they'll now have to grapple with. They might not be bringing home that podium today, despite such a strong opening and great initial result. It's going to be a tough pill to swallow, but now we do have a challenge of seeing where these drivers are going to end up, as Reinders is currently within a second of the 107 Mustang, and this is probably a Pyrrhic victory for them. They wanted to get that position, but they wanted to see him at their best to do it.
And of course, getting a place, that's the brakes being tapped by the 107 car. They know they don't have the pace, and they know there's no way they can contest. And if they were to go side by side, they don't know the state of the car. They haven't pushed it to their absolute limits while fighting. They are playing it safe and respectfully so, braking on a straight, letting the guys pass, and they're just here to see it out. They're just here to finish, get on to the highest position that they can still bring home, and very respectfully done. Massive kudos to the 107 car. They are doing an amazing job of managing all of this.
Yep, and I think that's the important thing that we need to remember. It's the resilience angle. It's remembering that throughout all of this, there are hundreds of drivers participating in these events, and the 44 cars that have made it up until this point, they have got an insurmountable task at times, but they still soldier through. They still fight the odds. They push forward. They make it happen. So that's where we have to look at this and say, despite it all, drivers have done amazingly, even if things haven't gone their way the whole way through.
And speaking of still going, if we look down at B43, we currently see the 419 McLaren within a second of the 414 Mercedes, still fighting for the for a position actually, as they're currently being lapped by some of the front runners. That's Kloppert in the 111 going on through. There's still drivers fighting for positions all the way down, basically everywhere, as we currently are looking at the second to last position, and further up in the GT4 grid, there's some more fights actually. Zabo is trying to get himself up on the podium. Robo in the 409 McLaren being chased down by the 404 McLaren, and this is for 3rd place in the GT4 standings.
And this is a fight that has been going on, brewing, battling for multiple laps now. They really have pushed each other to the very limit, and as a racing driver, you gotta have respect for that, because they haven't pushed each other too far, though at the same time, they have consistently drawn out the best in each other, and they've pushed each other forward in terms of this race effort. So they may not be walking away with the win, as Busak has thoroughly, comfortably got that in the bag for the GT4s, with 54 seconds to their name against Daniel Kiffer. They can certainly hold their heads high with a great podium battle.
Yeah, and if the battle for the win is not on the cards, then we have to settle for a battle for the podium, as we just saw the 107 car being overtaken by the 105 Ford, as they're dropping down the order more and more due to that incident, due to the damage. And I just checked, there was no contact being registered at all. So they just got this damage basically out of nowhere, and that's just ruined the final bit of their race. They have about 9 seconds back to the 101 Aston Martin. Hopefully they can keep this position, but it does look like they're dropping down quite significantly, about 2 seconds per lap. 6 laps remaining for them. Doesn't look very pretty.
And not looking like the best situation. And right now looking like backs against walls for some drivers as they're facing down the inevitable. I mean, we saw that with the 107, but we're also seeing that with a couple of drivers who try to make some upward momentum, but just keep getting stopped at almost every turn. I mean, I look at the likes of Niels Muller and the 117 and Timo Schaff. These two have been in very close proximity, lap on lap on lap, but there's not been major moves between the two for a good while. I think Muller's continuing to hit the brick wall, which is the Mercedes defense.
Now, I'm also keeping an eye out for drivers going across the limits in these final moments. 10 minutes have just ticked down on the final part of this race. It's just a little bit longer, and I can almost smell a drive-through coming somewhere in the top 10. Someone has to go over the limits now to try and keep these positions, and maybe it'll be the 101 Aston Martin, as they have the 109 Ferrari right on their rear, right on their heels, right on the rear diffuser of the car. It's going to be so close to find out which one of these will get the place and who will push too far, and especially emphasis on that too far, who will take those track limits home.
Well, we're gonna have to wait and see, as things are going to get pretty amped up. Final decisions, and again, wrapping back up to that overall question: do you go aggressive and go for the position, or do you hold back? Do you yield and preserve the position that you can know that you hang on to? That's gonna be the toss-up, the question mark around it all. And as we get through to our final sets of laps here, the final 5 or so laps, I'd say, this is where that question needs to be answered, and answered decisively by our drivers.
I did say that I smelt a drive-through penalty in the top 10. Well, it was not in the GT3, it was Leibniz, the 460 McLaren in P9 of the GT4 class, has just taken a drive-through penalty and dropped down to P10 in class after serving a drive-through penalty, which undoubtedly was for track limits. And looking at penalties, I do see that the 104 Ford in P22 has gone over their stint timer. They haven't received a penalty yet, but they surely will in just a moment, because they are at 51 minutes into their stint, and that's undoubtedly not right according to the rules. So they'll have to serve a penalty somewhere soon. Hopefully they won't lose too much from that one.
Well, the other question is that they have got 8 minutes on the clock, so satisfying that stint timer might actually be of more detriment, considering they already have 5 pit stops under their belt. So that is kind of the toss-up, and an interesting point to make is, like, can you quote-unquote sink a penalty if it's a less overall detriment to your race? Like, is that the right way to go about it?
Now, that really ultimately depends on what the penalty will be, because if it's only a 30-second penalty, I wouldn't even stop. I would just continue driving, take that penalty, just tank it all up, and add 30 seconds to my race time, because that pit stop's going to take about 50 seconds of your race time. But then again, if you get a stop go 30, then that adds about 60 seconds to your race time, and that would indeed be worse than taking that extra little splash and dash. Of course, taking the splash and dash is also shorter than your normal pit stop, so you wouldn't even be spending 50 seconds of time loss from that pit stop. So in the end, I would always go for that pit stop unless there's a fixed pit stop time. But then again, you never know what the penalty exactly is going to be, or what it's going to be towards the end, or if the stewards will act even harsher about it after the race. You never know, and it's always better to play safe and play within the rules, and that's obviously not what they're doing right here. But we'll have to see how that one ends while we're watching the P6 car, the number 109, after they've had an unfortunate drive-through in this final stage of the race, trying to get a top 5 finish still.
They're still potentially on the cards considering the situation of what was once our leader in 107 Mustang, and that's going to be the 101 alongside the 109 car, all converging alongside the battle that we've seen in GT4, the battle for the podium, Robo and Zabo, the 409s and 404 McLarens. It's all coming together right now in this heated microcosm of the racetrack. And with only 5 minutes ticking down on the clock, it's going to really be that final push, that decisive last couple of laps and those last couple of moves that really bring this all together and bring it home. Because the pace is still very high, albeit having dropped for the GT3s into the 129s and averaging the 137s for GT4s, things are still looking quite swift. The only exception being the 107 Mustang, which is lapping on average in the 132s, and has just been overtaken by not one but two cars, meaning that Hipov in the 109 Ferrari is going to get that top 5 after all.
And with the top 5, they may want to look for the top 4. They're still very close. There's that GT4 again. I believe that's the exact same GT4 that has caused, or at least led up to the incident before. That's very coincidental to see that car once again, as we are looking at a little bit of contact, and that is the 101 car being dropped back and Hipov up to P4.
Now let's take a quick relook at that as we see exactly what happened. Chaos reigns as into turn 3. You can see this is the Aston and Hipov coming together in that third corner. And there you go. That is going to be an unfortunate end to that battle. But Brenham is not going to be held back by such an encounter. Still pushing through, still giving it 110% of what he has. And he still is more than determined to make that top 5 finish happen. You can see him even closing in now.
And only 3 laps remaining. A little bit of contact there as well, as the 107 car is just trying to push on through. Maybe thinks that they can take that P5 home, but I do think that P6, the 101 Aston Martin's going to catch a slipstream, head right on through, and get the position here from the 107 cars. They're dropping back every single lap. So, yeah, like you said, the 132s being hit by the car. It's about 3 seconds of time lost every single lap. So we'll lose some more on this straight, and Brenham pushing that 101 car on to the 5th position, taking the top 5 home, and maybe even pushing to the P4 a little bit closer, but I don't think they'll have enough time. Only 3 laps remaining, so that won't be enough to the end.
Yeah, there's about 2 laps worth of time left on the clock. I don't think it's quite going to be enough, and we're only really going to see 2 more laps because Zimbal is late into lap 117, and by the time they cross over that start-finish line, it is not going to be enough, even on peak pace, to be able to cross that threshold and make it a 3rd. So that is going to be our penultimate lap officially being started here. Lap 118, Finn Zimbal, and I am seriously impressed with this Porsche's performance. It's really been quite something to watch them fight their way up and eventually, just through sheer grit, determination, make it up to P1 as it currently stands.
Yeah, it's absolutely crazy seeing them take first place from the start into turn 1, losing it, dropping down to P4, and then a whole bunch of battling all across the hours, all across all of the laps. We've seen them fight with the Ferrari, with the Ford, with the other Ferrari, and of course with another Ford once again. He's battled with everyone currently in the top 6, I believe, except for Brenham in the 101 Aston. They've just appeared out of nowhere, by the way. That's also a crazy stat. They started 13th. They're currently up in 5th, as was the 108 car, of the 105 car, started in 11th and up 3rd. But the Porsche has been fighting lap after lap after lap relentlessly, especially with the 102 and the 109 cars. And like you said, sheer grit, sheer determination has kept them in the fight on the grid and on the track. And they've absolutely deserved this victory.
As Eskil Klopper in the 111 Ferrari is encountering a little bit of a dicey overtake, and they come together coming out of turn 3. They absolutely wiped each other out. We need to see that again from the helicopter. We need to see exactly what has gone on there. This is the two of them just coming out of turn 3. Live replay. You can see it's just a bit of a tap. Re-entry coming in very hot from the Ferrari, taps the rear, and then both of them over rotating, but it doesn't end there. Pit maneuver at the exit of that collision, and all of a sudden things have gone bad to worse, and Klopper is going to be standing in P7, but Schwarzman all the way down into P10. Car severely wounded, and I'm sure stewards severely involved.
That's going to be a field day for the stewards. Going to be looking at this from several different angles. And Schwarzman now with a damaged car has got Vignoli right behind him, only 7 seconds. And that is going to be maybe even a close battle as he's trying to nurse this car like the 107 Ford is doing. So the 114 McLaren is currently trying to make their way onto the grid. Only one more lap remaining for them. And hopefully they'll get to stay in there, as that did look like a retaliation from the contact of lap 3 from the 111 car. And that would be a shame to throw away this result. But looking at Zimbel right now, going across the line, taking the victory from second place, taking first, dropping back, staying in the race, and getting the checkered flag victory for Zimbel and team for Gladius Competitions. The 103 Porsche claiming victory at the Red Bull Ring.
Seriously impressive stuff there. Zimbel Reinders taking a second position along with Duke Novicius in the 105 Ford, making that podium sealed as the rest of the field now make their way through. That is another face who has been absolutely brilliant in this course, and it is on the GT4 side of the spectrum. It's Lucas Busak, not only going all the way by themselves, but doing so with 56.5 seconds to their name compared to the next closest competitor. Seriously impressive stuff. Great racing by everyone out there. But there's going to be Busak taking the GT4 top honours as he now wraps his way around the track for the final time to cross that finish line. Track, I did notice 22 degrees track temp, 11 kilometers an hour winds. So the conditions, despite not getting wet at any point, they did really get a lot colder, and the drivers navigated it beautifully.
Yeah, like you said, different conditions towards the end of the race, but that did not stop Busak. The victory in the end with a lead of a lot of time. That's one to be proud of. Like you said, almost a minute ahead of the entire competition. It's domination from start to finish by the 401 car. A solo trip at that. Absolutely amazing event. Through all this, no rain, sadly. I have been disappointed, but not disappointed by the racing. It has been amazing from start to finish. Absolutely amazing scenes that we've seen. Crashes, overtakes, defenses, lapped cars. We saw the 107 Ford go in between two GT4s to lap them, and absolutely amazing scenes all throughout.
Yeah, well, seriously impressive stuff all around, and amazing racing from everyone on the track. And before we round things out, I do want to say it's been amazing to be on here as well. So we did have a couple of technical hiccups throughout, a couple of cameras not switching the way we intended, and we do thank everyone's patience on that. As I say, really appreciative of the opportunity for us to be able to join the broadcast team, and hopefully it can only go up and up and up in terms of quality, get more attuned. Myself and Waps had an amazing time in the commentary box.
I've absolutely enjoyed these past 4 hours. Could not have asked for a better co-commentator or a better event to join in on. So thank you all so much as well for tuning in and for watching us yap about these races, and of course enjoying it as well. Activity in the chat, we've all read it, of course. I mean, I've been reading this. I've been putting some of the comments into Google Translate because, of course, I don't speak German, but very, very happy with the things everyone was saying. So thank you all so much for watching. I want to thank all the racers as well, all the drivers that were active in the race. Have done an amazing job to finish this. I think almost everyone has crossed the finish line, so it's absolutely amazing to see that. And of course, big thanks to LFM for having us here.
Yep, and gotta say, just before we do go, of course, be sure to follow the Twitch channel and go jump on LFM yourself, Discord, whatever else, social medias. Be sure to check them all out if you want to keep up with the championship, with everything else that is going on, and of more exciting racing to come. As we alluded to before, this is not the only race. This is not where it ends. We do have many more series coming up, and that's not just in ACC. We've got a set of Corsa, we've got Automobilista 2. That's just to name a couple. As far as next session in this series goes, you'll want to join us next week because we are headed to Barcelona. We're headed to Catalonia. It's going to be brilliant, but we thank you all for coming along for the ride. We will see you all, hopefully, again very soon. But take care. Both myself and Waps, it's been an honour. See you next time. Goodbye, everyone. Take care.